One live.
Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel.
Greetings, everyone. Hello, and hope everyone's doing well today. Number 45 of the open mic. And today we're going to cover a deposition from Mr. Tom Fallon. It's quite lengthy, and if we have to, we'll break it into two parts. We'll cover another section at another time, but there's just so much information that gets imparted in this. I really want to get it all out there. I think it'll make for some good conversation, and it even highlights a little bit more as to a lot of the steps that were taken during the DOJ investigation, and how that kind of worked, and some of the things that were done that a lot of people really don't know unless you read the depositions. There's just no way you would know. It's not public, not been publicized. So anyway, before we get rolling here, let's let everyone say their name. So later on, when we take a little pause for questions and answers and so forth, people will have a little bit more association with a voice. Alice?
Hi, everyone in panel and chat. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Checking convictions, Linda.
Hi, everybody.
Disco.
Hey, I'm Disco, and I'm really looking forward to this this open mic tonight. It's about Fallon. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Inexplicable Susan.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
And just Rhonda.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. This should be a great open mic as usual. And I hope we get a lot of comments back and questions from the chat. We'll be ready to help you out.
Awesome. Christina.
Hi, everyone.
And Dr. Silkman.
Good morning. This is Dr. Silkman from Australia. Welcome.
That's right. Dr. Silkman's from the future. It's tomorrow morning for him.
That is correct.
Mr. Fallon is an interesting character. I think we can all agree. He's, when I first started, I really got into Making a Murderer. I really, really disliked the guy. I mean, on a really personal level, more than I should. Of course, I carried a lot of anger back then. And as I look back on it, think about how the perception and, my ignorance of the law entirely, not that I'm a lawyer by any means now, but I've learned a lot more. But just how this guy, he talked to people and he talked down to people. He was very condescending, always seemed to have put the knife in and twist it when he didn't really need to do that. Some of the scenes in Making a Murderer, you do so at your own peril. We remember all these different lines and so forth that got dramatized in the series. But the true fact is that Tom Fallon is a smart son of a bitch. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking that he's this, evil bastard. He's not. He is a very shrewd lawyer for the state of Wisconsin. And he used that intelligence to great effect. He is, we were talking just briefly before we started the live. And, he's one of these guys that he knows the law so well. He's able to really look at the various statutes and so forth and really take them apart to win a case or to win a motion or whatever the case may be. So don't ever discount how smart this guy is. When he took the case, when KZ took the case, I feel certain that was a complete setup. What he did, it was, I think it was just terrible, terrible. So I think she was led on in every sense of the word. So anyway, if we're going to get a little bit more into him, I'm going to bring up first. One of the first things I want to show before we get into the deposition is an email that let me get over here to it. An email that was written. This is in 2017, and there was at least one other email. There probably were more prior to this too, but this one email is talking about Kathleen is really pissing him off. Let's see here, web pages. There we go. That'll pop in there. This is talking about the Calumet County jail recordings, and it goes on here. You can see there at the top, she's beginning to piss me off. I guess we need to get that 8mm tape to work. This is talking about in conjunction with the flower video, just clear up any confusion. I will be in Chilton during the day on Friday. So Mark, can you and Amanda get that 8mm tape to play? We must be sure before we start litigating access to information discovery. Thanks, Tom. So I thought that was a really interesting email. Of course, there's many others between the two, so I just wanted to show that. There's a little bit more information that we'll get to that gives more background during the this deposition. They question him, and he does give a lot of his background. So Susan has volunteered again to help with the reading, help me reading this deposition. And as I said, if there are questions, we're not going to read straight through. We'll just pause at certain points before we get too far, and for a Q&A, comments, whatever. For those new that are new to the case, there's nothing groundbreaking here, but it is good information to have as a case overall. This case is massive, and it goes all the way back to '85. I don't care what anybody tells you. This case has its roots in the Halbach case has its roots in 1985. That's fact. I think for sure, I know Dr. Silkman agrees with me, and I suspect that many others do as well.
100%. 100%.
Sure do.
Yep. So before we get rolling here, are there anybody have any questions, comments before Susan and I get started? We good to go? Okay. All right, Susan, are you ready?
I'm ready, Jack.
All righty. I'll get this. I'll scroll this down here so we can see the lawyers. This was on May 12, 2005. It's a 99-minute deposition. There's roughly 90 pages. The end part of this, it's a 97-page document, but there's several pages of index. So there's a roughly 85, 90 pages. And here's the lawyers, of course, Glenn and Kelly Covelli on behalf of Vogel in Manitowoc County, Mr. Bascom on behalf of Manitowoc County. And then we have Mr. Fallon. He's on behalf of Casoric and Manitowoc County. There's Corey Finkelmeyer. He's from the DOJ on behalf of Mr. Fallon. So, room full of lawyers, right? So, okay. Susan, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go.
All right. Would you state your name, please?
My name is Tom Fallon. F as in Frank, Allon.
And what's your business address, Mr. Fallon?
17 West Main Street, Madison, Wisconsin.
And what's your office phone number?
Office number, blah, blah, blah.
And do you have a cell phone number?
No, I do not. We just check out phones from the pool.
All right. And what's your date of birth?
Date of birth, July 15th, 1953.
And what is your current occupation?
Current occupation is attorney.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed at the Attorney General's office for the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
And do you have a particular designation as the kind of attorney you are in the AG's office?
Assistant Attorney General assigned to the Criminal and Litigation, Antitrust, and Consumer Protection Unit.
And how long have you been assigned to that unit?
I've been with that unit since I started at Justice, January 25th, 1993.
What are your duties as an attorney in that unit?
Primarily assigned to a criminal caseload. Throughout the years, cases have ranged from arson to racketeering, to child abuse, to sex predator, to cold case homicide. Right now, I'd say probably about 80 to 90% of my caseload is predator prosecutions. Remainder is child abuse or cold case homicides.
And when you say your caseload, are you referring to trial level cases in which you're involved, or appellate cases, or both?
It's strictly trial practice.
And how is it determined which cases you'll work on?
Usually the cases are assigned by the unit supervisor, Steve Tinker. Predator cases are spread throughout the unit, although I seem to have acquired my fair share of them. I'm probably the attorney with the most child abuse experience in our unit, so if possible, I'm the one who would draw that case, assuming I'm free. I mean, given whatever is going on my caseload. If something comes in, I'll handle it. But generally speaking, everything is pretty well divvied up, A few of us have some things, or some of us have interest in white collar cases or, racketeering stuff. And for me, I gravitate more to the social science, child abuse, and, general prosecution.
How, excuse me, how is it that the Attorney General's office gets involved in the trial court prosecution of criminal cases in the first place?
Well, most of the criminal cases we have concurrent or shared jurisdiction with the district attorneys. Usually, we're invited by the district attorney on a request for a special prosecutor, or we could be asked by, say, our Division of Criminal Investigation may have been asked to assist the locals. And then, they may ask us to see if we want to interject and call the DA and see if we can, if we want to help them or want them to help. But generally, by and large, we're asked in for probably most of what we do in our unit. The predator, we've kind of worked out a deal with the DAs. We do about half the cases in the state, and the DAs do the other half, just because of the workload. And we don't have a lot of folks in our unit doing general criminal prosecution work these days, so we kind of spread things out.
I believe you testified just a little bit earlier that you started in the Attorney General's office in January of 93.
Correct.
Would you tell me your employment history prior to that?
Sure. I started as an assistant corporation counsel in Kenosha County, Wisconsin, November 12, 1980. I worked in that capacity as an assistant corporation counsel assigned to the Child Support and Family Court Unit until June 3rd of 82. I was an assistant district attorney in Kenosha County from June 3rd of 82 until February of 86. I left, did a little traveling, and then went into private practice for a few months later in September of 86 for a law firm in Cedarburg called Levy & Levy, Levy, in Cedarburg. I worked with them for probably about a year and a half, I think it was, till about April of 88. And I went back to the district attorney's office in Kenosha County as a special prosecutor to run a narcotics unit. The 1988 Omnibus Crime Control Act, afforded a lot of money to the local agencies. And so they were creating more MEG units, MEG, they're called. So I was asked back by my former boss, District Attorney Bob Zapp, ZAPF, at the time to run a narcotics unit. So I came back and worked another, from 88 until 93. I left in 93 to come to Justice.
Okay, thanks. Would you tell me about your education, please?
Sure. Undergraduate degree, Marquette University, Liberal Arts, 1975. Law school degree, Drake University, 1980.
Now, prior to the decision by the district attorney in Manitowoc County and the Innocence Project to enter into a stipulation vacating the judgment of conviction of Stephen Avery because DNA exonerated him. Did you have any knowledge of the Avery case?
No, I did not.
All right. And how did it first come to your attention that you were going to become involved in a request for assistance from Manitowoc County concerning the conviction of Stephen Avery?
I believe I first heard of our possible involvement through my unit supervisor, Steve Tinker. He indicated that, this is a faint recollection, but that there was a request from the district attorney, whose name escapes me at the moment, to
Mark Rohr.
Mark Rohr.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, to review the matter on our behalf. And that was to assist the two new attorneys in our new to the unit, the creation of a public integrity unit, to assist them, provide some backup consultation services, to assist them in a full review of the matter. And that's my recollection. After we became involved, I did see a copy of Mr. Rohr's letter, but I think I first heard it through Steve Tinker. That's the best I can recall.
Okay. And is it your belief that you were selected because of your criminal experience in the actual prosecution of cases, and that that was an aspect of the assistance that was being sought by the Manitowoc County DA's office?
I think so. That would be my guess, yes.
Okay. And was that generally characteristic of what you did in the course of the investigation between, I'm going to say, starting in late September of 2003 and running through until the report was prepared in December of 2003?
You mean, did I fulfill that capacity as a consultant type of?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I think that's how I looked at my role in, sorry.
I think that's how I looked at my role in that regard, sure.
Okay. We've had some testimony here, and I know my colleagues will object if I mischaracterize it, that there was interaction between Mr. Glenn cell phone ring, sorry, by Mr. Kelly. There was interaction between the special agents from DCI who were conducting the field investigation and the attorneys in the Madison office, specifically yourself, Jennifer Nashold, and Monica Burkert-Briss.
Yes, there was.
And that was the greater part of that consultation between the DCI agents and the attorneys was with Jennifer Nashold and Monica Burkert-Briss, and the lesser part was with you. Does that seem right to you?
That seems fair, yeah.
Okay. And do you recall whether the occasions on which you were asked to provide guidance or opinions or thoughts about the process were generally those in which there were issues respecting the criminal prosecution and criminal prosecutorial matters?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you remember the first meeting that took place involving, as I understand it from the prior testimony, Mark Rohr, perhaps an assistant attorney general from his office, yourself, Jennifer Nashold, Monica Burkert-Briss, Deb Strauss, and Amy Lehman?
Now that you mention it, I do remember a meeting. If you had asked me that 10 minutes ago, I'd say no. But yeah, I do. But I couldn't possibly tell you when that was. And you did a better job at figuring out who was there because I couldn't have.
Well,
yeah, there was.
we've taken testimony here today, so.
All right. So you're ahead of me there. But yeah, I do remember the first meeting. And I think that's when we got the box of stuff, meaning his file. That's about probably the only thing I remember from that meeting, really.
His file being Rohr's file?
Yeah, the Manitowoc DA's file.
Okay.
On the Avery case, yeah.
And do you remember whether he presented to you that he was troubled by information that he had received since the exoneration of Stephen Avery had become public? That people in his office were saying, I remember that case. We thought at the time it wasn't Stephen Avery. It was Gregory Allen, and we told that to the DA and to the sheriff. And he was coming into the AG he, Rohr, was coming into the AG and saying, "Listen, this is troubling information to me, and I want your help investigating it." Mr. Cavelli, objection to the form of the question. Mr. Fallon, I join that. Mr. Finkelmeyer, do you understand the question, Tom? Because you can answer it if you understand it.
Yeah, if you're asking me, do I recall him saying one of the reasons why he wanted us to take it was he was troubled by these supposed rumors or comments he received from his staff, you mean?
Back to Kelly. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, faintly. I mean, I don't have a real strong recollection, but it's possible. Yeah.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 5, and I'm going to be directing you, so I'll just tell you,
Sure.
to the third full paragraph from the bottom at Bates stamp page 5614. But take whatever time you want with that document
Sure.
itself, just to make sure you recognize it.
I guess I better read this. Hold on a second. Okay, yeah, I see the paragraph you're referring to.
Would you read the paragraph into the record?
Sure. Document 5614. Quote, soon after the mistake became public knowledge within the Manitowoc County Courthouse, the current district attorney, Mark Rohr, started receiving information that people within the courthouse never believed these crimes were committed by Avery. These people all believed Allen committed the crime. Some of these individuals even stated to DA Rohr they made these concerns known to either the district attorney at the time, Dennis Vogel, or the Manitowoc County Sheriff, Tom Kosoric, end quote.
And do you remember a discussion at the initial meeting that we've been talking about as to who those people might be who were saying these things to Rohr?
Faintly, and you know, I'm not sure if it was at that meeting or I heard somewhere else, but something sticks in the back of my mind. It might have been one of the former secretaries from the DA, but that's the best I can recall.
You don't remember any names?
No.
Do you think that that subject matter, this is to say the identification of those people and what they were saying, was important?
Sure. I mean, if you're going to run down an investigation, anybody who's got a lead or an idea, it's certainly worth pursuing. Sure.
And that would be true of Rohr himself, right? Since he heard these statements?
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you know whether or not any investigatory interview was conducted of Rohr by the Department of Justice?
I don't know specifically if they formally interviewed him or they just got ideas from him. I don't know if that was ever formally done.
Well, do you know whether or not there's any record of any interview of Rohr by the investigators or by anybody from the Department of Justice?
Right. I don't recall ever seeing anything in writing or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. I want to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 3 and ask you to just take a moment and examine that. Mr. Bascom, what's the base on that again?
5088.
Thanks.
Okay.
Back to Kelly. Was that a directive from the Attorney General to various personnel in the Department of Justice about the response that the department was going to make and carry out concerning the request for assistance that was made of it by the District Attorney of Manitowoc County?
Appears to be. I mean, this looks like a copy of the same email that I got on the date indicated. So as far as I recall, this may be the first comments from the front office as to what they expected.
And to your knowledge, is what they expected carried out?
Sure. I mean, my specific recollection of what the public integrity unit was expected to do was to look at the case and determine whether or not there was any criminal misconduct associated with the investigation or prosecution of the case. And to somewhat of a lesser extent, it's probably one of the reasons why I was asked in is whether or not there was any type of, ethical violation with respect to failure to disclose what is traditionally called, quote, exculpatory evidence, close quote, in the case. So that's how I took it, anyways, as to how I was supposed to be involved in it.
And also one of the objectives, as the Attorney General stated it, was, quote, to utilize the issues to advocate for more resources from our crime lab, unquote.
Okay.
Paragraph 3.
Sure. I'll have to take that as at your word. That was never an issue with the three of us with respect to what we were doing here.
Okay. You just made reference a moment ago to a focus. You thought that would be part of your responsibility on exculpatory evidence.
Right.
What is exculpatory evidence as you understand it?
Exculpatory evidence is evidence, it's usually, it's multifaceted. But taking it from the ethics code, it's either evidence which clearly shows that somebody didn't commit the offense in question, or is evidence which may tend to mitigate their sense of responsibility for the offense to a somewhat lesser liability, or perhaps would go towards mitigation in favor of a more lenient sentence. Evidence in that regard, evidence, also it's evidence of which its failure to turn over would be likely to change the outcome of the case.
And the word, quote, exculpatory, unquote, means evidence which may have a tendency to exculpate the person who is accused.
Certainly.
And the origin of the principle of exculpatory evidence is constitutional in a case decided by the Supreme Court entitled Brady versus Maryland. Is that right?
I think you can make a case that goes back before that, but sure, that's a seminal case in the United States Supreme Court. There are several others that come after it. And then, of course, there's, the first ethics revisions probably, I bet, I didn't look, predate Brady, I think so.
And in this case, the focus on exculpatory evidence had to do with whether or not there were other viable suspects who were known to the police and were not provided to the defense lawyers.
I think so.
That was the major question with respect to exculpation.
Sure.
In this case.
Yeah. What other suspects were out there? What reports were existed and turned over to who and when and under what circumstances and things of that sort. Sure.
And that was one of the principal tasks of the DCI investigators, was to pursue at the field level the primary evidentiary facts about that.
Well, they were required to basically, redo the investigation, I think. I wasn't party to any of their individual DCI meetings as to what their marching orders were, but my impression was that they were to go back and review these witnesses and check out any new leads regarding what was known in 1985 and what was not known, and then pull everything together. And then the lawyers would sit down, look at it, and see whether or not we've got, some criminal misconduct or some ethical violation. So I think it's all part and parcel of it. Sure, just go try to figure out what happened in 85. Let's break right there, line 6. Okay. We're about 20 pages in. So let's break right there for a moment. And anyone here in the panel got questions? A question? Comment?
I just want to say, we are so fortunate to have this document, and it's so incredible that we're reading this, because it goes to show the cleverness, the shrewdness of Tom Fallon. He knew exactly what was coming. As soon as Kelly had mentioned exculpatory evidence, he knew what he was alluding to. And the way he handles exculpatory evidence blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. Because remember, you're correct. He was called up to defend the state And Kelly is leading him down the garden path to admit that the state got it wrong. But the way Tom Fallon handles his questioning is the typical lawyer. Do not answer anything.
I agree. Sunshine Christina.
It's funny that you mention exculpatory evidence because I actually wrote a op on Reddit after I read his deposition about how he viewed exculpatory evidence and how he tried to minimize the the um the the deed done by Manitowoc County by withholding this stuff. Like, I mean, he's very, like you said, he's very skillful he makes Kratz look like a rookie on this, dazzle them with bullshit kind of language he has. Because he makes it sound like they didn't do anything wrong, yet everyone knows that they did something wrong. But he doesn't give anything away, and he doesn't look like Roar. He's not steady saying I don't recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. He appears to answer every question, but yet he never really reveals anything.
Yeah, agree.
I was going to say Tom Fallon would make the perfect poker card player, right?
No doubt.
Reveal absolutely nothing. He may have nothing in his hands, but he gives the impression that he's got, a straight deck. So what's incredible here is how this is going to unfold. And it's truly remarkable because remember, he was recruited to help the state out. He was not going to give any rope to Kelly whatsoever. And my final point is how ironical that he had a lot of experience in child abuse and in sex predator cases.
Yeah.
Oh my, we can go a lot of places with that one, but I think I'll leave it there.
Christina?
I was just going to say, it's ironic that once again we have someone who is involved in the 85 case, who also turns out he is also involved in the 2005 case. Now, guilters like to say, well, he didn't play a role in the 85 case at all, but that's not true.
Well, he really didn't.
He did, though, because he helped pin the narrative that minimized Manitowoc's guilt and their culpability, right?
Well, after the fact, yeah.
Yes. So he did play a part in it because he's helping to control the narrative that the 85 case wasn't really an intentional wrongful conviction of Stephen Avery. So if Stephen Avery was to win his civil suit, it's going to make Fallon look bad as well.
Well, that's gonna walk right back into the AG's office and land on their desk. Absolutely.
So he had a stake in Stephen Avery having the civil suit dropped. Even though people like to say that he didn't, he very well did, because he helped to write the report that said that Manitowoc County didn't do anything wrong. Yet they had the evidence that shows that, everything was fictitious. So I just find it interesting that Strauss and Fallon and Griesbach, even though, they don't look like they were involved, they were.
Well, I mean, at least in a peripheral sense, certainly. Yeah. I mean, it certainly had its effect. I mean, even though they didn't criminally investigate from a criminal side, later
they may not have written out many reports or any reports, but they were all on the property.
I'm just saying that after the fact, this is just as critical time, if not more so, than in '85, because now Glenn and Kelly are coming in armed with all these reports. I was actually going to say that to Doc. Luckily, they had the reports from all these different people. So,
yeah, and they had deposed Marcel prior to this, and Marcel, she establishes that the report Dvorak wrote, claiming that Stephen was witnessed in Marionette County on the day the 11-year-old was assaulted, is utter bullshit, right? So.
yeah.
We have them fabricating reports as back in '85, so we know that they'll do that to make a case.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you have to wonder. I mean, I believe, being an AG at the DOJ level, he had to have known about the DNA hit on Gregory Allen. So he's sitting there answering these questions. And in the back of his mind, he knows that Gregory Allen has been linked to another sexual assault that he committed while Stephen Avery was in prison for his crime.
It's possible. We don't know that for positive, but yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how tightly. Well, maybe. I'm gonna say maybe. I'm sure Peg knew, but as to how big that circle was, it's hard to say.
I think that's why he was tasked to help with the case against Stephen Avery. They had to get it over with as quick as possible, right? So this guy, I mean, why did they lend Fallon, of all people? I mean, she's got a ton of other investigators. He just stated that his specialty was child sex assault. And, and this was a murder case. So I'm sure she had other AGs who were better suited to handle murder cases at the trial level, but yet she sends Fallon and she sends Strauss, a white collar crime, an investigator, to lend a helping hand.
I don't know. It's hard to say how they divvied it up. I mean, Tinker was in charge of that, and who knows what he was told. It's possible. I don't know. But Doc.
I was going to say, I made the comment in the chat that Tom Fallon's role was almost like Peg-El, the internal Peg-El, basically looking at the investigation, looking at the report, shining it up as much as possible, trying to make the state look really good, and it's not their fault. So basically, when you think about the Peg-El report, I reckon his aim, or part of his aim, was to rubber stamp that report to say, hey, look, guys, nothing to see here, right? And it's very interesting, and as fate took it, that he was one of the special prosecuting attorneys in the 2005 case. Now, how ironical is that, right? And here's my final point. In a way, I personally believe, and I think we all do, that Stephen Avery was set up, right? Set up to take the fall. And in a way, this absolved the state of Wisconsin, right? Because their ultimate comeback would be, well, see, he is a murderer, and, the state never did anything wrong. End of civil suit. So in a way, it was like a circle, right? And setting Stephen up for the 2005 murder really absolved them and cleared their conscience, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Well,
because
sure.
Because all the law enforcement officers, remember on MAM, I remember it was Herman. He said, oh, well, if Stephen Avery had remained in prison and wasn't exonerated, Teresa Horpack would still be alive. So everyone was playing Nostradamus, right? And, it's amazing how, it's just so bizarre that you have Tom Fallon, who's now protecting the state in the civil suit, and you have Tom Fallon as a senior prosecuting attorney in both Stephen and Brendan Dassey. The mind just boggles. It's just boggling.
I agree 100%. Linda or Alice, anybody been watching the chat for questions? Is there anything out there that any questions from anyone we need to cover before we continue with the deposition? I see Jeff has made a comment. Hey, Jeff Jones. These people are all willing to go down to protect Jerry Poggle and Tom Kosarik. Can't hold the wall forever. Sun shining on these facts has got to make people tighten their sphincters, as Dr. S says. Yeah, that's a good saying. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt, Jeff. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay, let me get this turned back on here, and we shall continue.
Okay. You ready?
Yep. All right. We're starting on, line 6.
Just a moment ago, you said you thought that they were to, quote, redo the investigation, unquote. Did you yourself review, as part of your execution of your duties in regard to the Avery report by the Attorney General, did you review the DCI investigatory reports?
I reviewed a pretty fair amount of them. I can't say that I reviewed all of them, but I believe I did review their reports regarding the interviews of the sheriff and the law enforcement officers. I think I looked at those.
City and county?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
And although I don't have a clear recollection, but I'm pretty sure that I read Mr. Kosarik's report. I'm just drawing a blank on Manitowoc PD. It's been a couple of years, and I did have the opportunity of sitting in on their interviews, and at least part of it, their interview with former district attorney, Mr. Vogel. I got maybe, I don't know how long they went, but I had to leave before they were done. So I did get a chance to sit in a little bit of that one, because that was done downtown in Madison.
Do you recall the report that reviewed the interview conducted by Sheriff Peterson, the then current sheriff of Manitowoc County, by Ms. Strauss in this case?
I probably did, but I have no recollection of that.
Let me ask you another question. Do you know whether or not that sheriff objected to Ms. Strauss and said, quote, I certainly hope you're not going to try to reinvestigate this case, unquote. And she assured him, quote, oh no, we're not trying to reinvestigate this case, unquote. Do you remember that at all?
I don't have a recollection. I can't help you on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 20 and ask you to take a moment and examine that. And then tell us what that is. Mr. Bascom, that's Bates stamped.
5091. Okay, sure.
By Mr. Kelly.
Well, this looks like at least the 5091 and 5092 are a copy of an email I sent to the other people directly involved here, Monica Burkhart-Brist, Jennifer Nashhold, and then the two investigators, Amy Lehman and Deb Strauss, basically advising of my efforts to track down who currently had the file, the defense file. When can we get it, and where it had been?
And amongst the places that you tried to track down that file were the Wisconsin Innocence Project.
Yeah, right.
And the Office of the State Public Defender.
Yeah, whatever's indicated there. I don't remember how we started or whatever, but I thought that would be a good place to start to try to figure out where the file was and who had it. We assumed that the Project Innocence had the file, since they were working on the DNA issue. So,
well,
I thought we'd start there.
Let me go through with you and see if you remember the possible sources.
Okay.
Of the criminal defense file in the case would be the Manitowoc County Public Defender in the person of Risa Evans, who was the first lawyer on the case. Is that right?
Right.
Attorney James Bogart, a private practitioner, since became a judge,
Judge.
who actually tried the case.
Right.
The appellate division of the State Public Defender's Office in the person of Jack Shayer, who handled the post-conviction proceedings in the case,
Right.
or at least one of the post-conviction proceedings.
One of them. Right.
The Wisconsin Innocence Project, insofar as it got any of those files from any of the other participants.
Right.
Steve Glenn, who is present in the room today, and Rob Hannock, his colleague, who did the second post-conviction proceedings in the case.
Yep, that's right.
Any other sources that you're aware of?
None that come to mind. That's the best I could put together of the longer list there of people who might have had some contact with the file. That's the best I can come up with.
All right. Was it the responsibility of the DCI investigators to obtain whatever files there were in the investigation?
Well, we were asked for their assistance, but I just said I think, because of the fact that it was Project Innocence, and we were working with the lawyers that I would make the professional courtesy call, being a lawyer myself, and that I would call Mr. Finley and see if we could arrange or see what I could find out as much as of the file, or if they had all of the file or just what the story was. So I just took it upon myself. I said, I'm sure I was thinking professional courtesy. I said, quote, I'll just make the call, unquote. I think they did go, and I think Steve Tinker, and I think subsequently followed up with a call to Jim Bogart and ask if, because sometimes lawyers keep notes from files from yesteryear on cases of great interest or whatever. And, just as a stab in the dark, do you have anything left over from the case? And he told me that he hadn't, that he didn't. I didn't have any idea where Risa Evans was. I had heard that she was practicing law, and I think the agents had to go and find her and ask her if she had anything from the file, because it looked like she might have had the file on 2 different occasions. And so I think we asked them to go talk to her and see if she had anything left over. And as far as...
What's your recollection of what they found out?
My recollection is that they didn't have anything of great significance, if at all. Impression is that she didn't have anything, and that basically I was left with the impression that what we finally looked at from Project Innocence was pretty much the file. I couldn't find evidence of paperwork floating elsewhere.
Are you satisfied, as you sit here today, that you found the entirety of the criminal defense file in this case? Mr. Cavalli. Objection. Vague as to what you mean by. You mean what's left of it or whatever existed? By Mr. Kelly. I mean whatever existed of the criminal defense file in the Stephen Avery case, that when the Attorney General's office conducted its review and you tried to locate all of that, are you satisfied that you found it all?
There's nothing but rank speculation. Let's put it this way. I have no reason to believe that there is paperwork elsewhere. I mean, we went and asked everybody who had their hands on the file, I believe so. And so I was left with the reasoned conclusion that Project Innocence that had that. Now, whether or not, lawyers forgot they have notes somewhere on the case, I have no way of knowing that. But I mean, I felt about as comfortable as I could, having made all the reasonable inquiries, that we got pretty much all we could get from the defense perspective.
Apart from your own courtesy-based efforts to get the file from the Wisconsin Innocence Project, are you aware of any other gathering of primary information, whether from witnesses or paperwork, that was done by any of the lawyers in the Justice Department, in distinction to the DCI investigators?
Oh, you mean, have any of my colleagues made inquiries elsewhere? Is that what you're driving at?
What I'm wanting to know is,
Oh,
other than you doing
okay.
the effort to get the criminal defense file, all the rest of the primary investigation work was done by
These DCI investigators.
the DCI investigators.
Yeah, that's my impression. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's my impression.
And it's their reports that constitute the investigatory reports in the case.
Right.
So when Exhibit 7 was prepared, the investigatory data, if you will, the interviews of witnesses, the documents, and so forth, were provided to those who composed the reports by the DCI investigators' reports and the documents that were gathered.
And the documents that we gathered, right. We got documents. We pulled the criminal appeals files from the yesteryear, but we didn't talk to the attorneys who had handled the appeals. Kind of gave them the Chinese wall thing. We took all the stuff that the Manitowoc DA had in his files. I went over to and personally looked at the Project Innocence material. After having reviewed everything else, then I went and looked at their stuff. And then there was the DCI agents, the critical interviews of the people from yesteryear who made the critical decisions in the case. Yeah, that would be it. That was their compilation of the materials that I assume went into this final document here, which you have as Exhibit 7.
And that final document is a correspondence memorandum from the Attorney General back to the District Attorney of Manitowoc County, reporting to the District Attorney on the request for assistance that had been made of the Department of Justice by the District Attorney.
Right. I believe that's the final report.
It's not an investigatory report itself. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know what you want to how you want to label it. All it is the conclusions of our investigation. It's in memorandum form. So whether it's an investigative report, I suppose that's just a matter of how you want to look at it. But this is the final report, as it were. Yeah.
All right. And do you know who was primarily responsible for the composition of that report?
The final drafts, I don't know how it came into final form. I know that the bulk of the early drafting and everything that was done by Jennifer Nashhold. I know that I think I saw one earlier draft and offered my 2 cents worth, as it were, in formulating a draft, which was late November. So where it went from beginning of December till the final form, I don't know who else had their hands in creating the final look, but I know Jennifer did the bulk of the drafting.
All right. Do you recall whether, when Jennifer was drafting, she was drafting electronically in such a way that she could shoot drafts to you and to Monica and to Steve Tinker while she was drafting? Or did she just work up one basic initial document and then...
My recollection is that she worked up an original Word document and then emailed myself and Monica. I don't know if Steve was in on the first draft or not. I do have a recollection, and we looked at this and says, quote, well, what do you think, unquote. And then we'd throw in our 2 cents worth and then...
And when you threw in your 2 cents worth, was it electronically in response to her?
I did. Mine was, yes.
Okay. And did you get a copy of the subpoena in this case, calling for the materials that we called for?
No, I didn't get. In fact, I've never been subpoenaed. I didn't know you guys wanted to talk to me until about 10 days ago. So the one thing I was asked to do by our office, by Mr. Finkelmeyer, was to collect any documentation that I may have had relative to the case. So I pulled my emails and then I looked and I found an earlier draft. I was referred to on November 25th, one of the early drafts, where I'd made comments on electronically and shot them back to her.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled that, and that's pretty much about it. I didn't have too many other documents, but...
When you say you pulled the documents, do you mean that they already physically existed and you went and got them? Or do you mean that you pulled them up you retrieved them from the electronic system?
I had one email that I had a hard copy of. I have no idea why. It must have been. And then the rest of them were in the email directory. So I looked through the old case file and pulled up the email directory and then printed out the emails that I had got.
Tell me what, quote, the email directory, unquote, is.
Well,
In the Department of Justice system.
No. That's not in the Department of Justice. Every lawyer has, a computer on their desk. And you've got, in this case, I set up a file, quote, Avery, unquote. And in the Avery file, I have one section that says, quote, emails, unquote, to the case. And then another one, I have a copy of the draft that I worked on. And then I have a copy of the final draft that was forwarded to all of us, which I guess is this one here.
Referring to Exhibit 7?
Right. And so I went into the emails one and I looked at all the emails I had and then just printed them out and gave them to Mr. Finkelmeyer.
Do you believe you exhausted all of the documents that you had when you conducted that search and provided the information to Mr. Finkelmeyer?
Yeah.
Is there any possibility that they could be stored on a server somewhere, some other material?
You're asking the wrong guy when it comes to computer stuff. I haven't the foggiest idea. It's a mystery to me. It's like a running joke in our office. I've been around too long to figure out how computers work. So whether or not there might be something on a server somewhere, I'm the last guy you want to ask that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
In the report that was prepared and in dialogue that preceded the final draft of the report, there are statements about a comparison conducted by somebody between the public defender's file, or the defense file, if you will, and the prosecutorial and sheriff's file as to materials concerning other suspects.
Okay.
Were you the person who made that comparison?
Probably me, I would guess. I know I'm the guy who went to Project Innocence to Mr. Finley's office and spent a couple of hours one day. I think it was a couple. I know it was a couple hours on one day. Whether I had to go back, I don't remember. But I remember sitting there with a stack and going through it saying, okay, we've got this, we've got that, we don't have this. I was looking to see what they had in their file. So in terms of the prosecution file and what the defense file had, that would have been me. I mean, whether somebody else did or not, I couldn't tell you. But my guess, it was me.
And when you went to Project Innocence and conducted that comparison, what was it that you were carrying with you that came from the prosecutorial file that you wanted to compare to the defense file? What'd you bring with you?
I brought with me everything that we had dug up regarding police reports on Gregory Allen that we pulled from the DA's file, and then to see if any of that information had found its way into the defense file.
And do you think it would be fair to say that you also checked to see if there was any information about Gregory Allen in the sheriff's file?
I might have. I suspected I did. I suspected I did that. For whatever reason, I don't have a clear recollection of that. My guess is that I would have, although I do remember finding reports of Gregory Allen in the DA's file, which indicate they were received from the sheriff's file and the sheriff's department. And I do remember seeing reports of other possible people, other suspects other than Allen, because I think might have been another assault.
This is in the DA's file?
Right.
My question is,
okay,
did you check for any information about other suspects in the sheriff's office file and take that with you, if you found any, when you went to compare it to the Innocence Project defense file?
Boy, I don't have a clear recollection.
Of course you don't. That's okay.
of that, I might have and I might not have.
Let me just
Yeah,
tell you that just very
sure.
shortly.
Sure.
Just a little while ago, we had a document identified and discussed with Amy Lehman in which she received the sheriff's file.
Okay.
Materials in the sheriff's file concerning other suspects. And that report that she prepared reported that there was material about other suspects and named them.
Okay.
And said there was nothing in the sheriff's file about Gregory Allen.
Okay, that's possible, sure.
Does that assist your recollection at all about whether you had anything from the sheriff's file when you went to do the comparison? Mr. Cavalli, I'm going to object to the form of that question. Mr. Finkelmeyer, you can answer it if you understand.
Well, I understand that what he's getting at. I just can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You were carrying some materials concerning Gregory Allen that you had obtained from the prosecutor's file that you compared to the Innocence Project defense file.
I did.
And those materials concerned a 1983 offense in August that took place on the same beach where Penny Bernstein was assaulted in 1985. That led to a conviction in February of 1984 of Gregory Allen.
Yeah, I don't remember when he was convicted, but I remember there was an assault on the beach north of Manitowoc, I think.
And that was?
And and south of where she was assaulted. Yeah, it was a 1983 report. That's my recollection as well. I did have that. I know I did, yeah.
And where'd you get it?
Out of the DA's file.
Okay. Is it your reporter? Go ahead. Is it your recollection that you got anything else from the DA's file concerning Gregory Allen when you went to the Innocence Project to do the comparison?
You mean other than that report?
Other than that report.
Yeah, I think there were.
About Gregory Allen.
Yeah, about Greg Allen. Right now I don't, because I haven't reviewed anything. So it just seems to me that there was another allegation or something else about Allen, and there was one or two other suspects as well. I mean, there was a couple of reports in the DA's file, which I went to look to see.
About other suspects?
Yeah, about other suspects.
Right.
But I can't. There might have been one more about Allen, but I can't recall.
Okay, so you don't know.
Yeah, that's.
You know there was the one.
I know there was the one.
But you don't know about others.
I don't know if there was another one or not.
Okay.
Something tells me there might have been, but geez, I just can't tell you right now.
Okay. And when you inspected the Innocence Project defense file, you found a document concerning another suspect that Gregory Allen, another suspect than Gregory Allen, which had on it a stamp that said, quote, received State Public Defender's Office, Manitowoc, October 23, 1985, unquote.
Yeah, it was October 23 or 25th. It was hard to make out the number. Yeah, the Allen report was there, and there was... No,
Mr. Cavalli. Well, wait a minute. Let him in, Mr. Finkelmeyer. Wait, Mr. Kelly. No, that's misleading. Mr. Cavalli, let him finish his answer. Counsel, you can... Mr. Finkelmeyer. Wait, let him answer. Mr. Kelly, Mr. Finkelmeyer, continue, Mr. Fallon, please. By Mr. Kelly.
Jesus Christ.
The question has to do with a person other than Gregory Allen. Mr. Cavalli. Well, by Mr. Kelly. That had a stamp on it. Mr. Finkelmeyer. Wait. By Mr. Kelly. That's the question. Mr. Cavalli. I'm going to... Mr. Finkelmeyer. The question is his. The answer is his. Mr. Kelly. Yeah, and he has to respond to the question he's asked. Mr. Cavalli. Well, you can move. Mr. Kelly. And he's an experienced Mr. Finkelmeyer. Well, that's what he was doing, I think. Mr. Bascom. Make an objection, and then you can move to strike. Mr. Kelly. He's an experienced lawyer, and he knows that. Mr. Cavalli. Just for the record, let me note my objection that you should allow the witness to finish. If you want to move to strike, you then may move to strike. But please don't interrupt the witness until he's done answering your question. Mr. Kelly. Okay, we'll reframe the question.
Okay.
By Mr. Kelly. Now, when you made the comparison between the materials that you had from the district attorney's file and the materials that were in the Innocence Project defense file, there was one document in the Innocence Project defense file and only one document of a suspect other than Gregory Allen that had a stamp on it that said, quote, received State Public Defender's Office, Manitowoc, October 23, 1985, unquote. Isn't that right, Mr. Cavalli? Object to the form of the question.
All right. Let me just make sure I got your question right. You're asking for a document other than the one that concerns Allen.
That's correct.
And you want to know whether there was any other document in the file with a file stamp on it mentioning another suspect.
No. I want to know if there was one document, and only one document, in the file involving a suspect other than Allen that said, quote, received Manitowoc Public Defender's Office, October 23, 1985, unquote. If you remember.
Specifically, I don't have a recollection. I only have a recollection of the one involving Allen. I don't have a recollection of another one, although it's very possible.
Okay. There was no document in the Innocence Project defense file involving Gregory Allen that had a stamp on it that said, quote, received State Public Defender's Office, Manitowoc County, October 23, 1985, unquote. Mr. Cavalli. Objection. When you made the comparison. Isn't that right, Mr. Cavalli? Objection.
Involving?
Mr. Cavalli. To the form of the question by Mr. Kelly. Involving Gregory Allen.
That's correct.
You're saying that there was a document that was stamped as received from the Public Defender's Office dated October 23, 1985.
Wait. Okay, wait a minute.
And that referred to Gregory Allen.
There was, okay, all right. I guess for mincing words here, as I recall, there was a small, this is the best I can do in 3 years, small packet of information of police reports regarding, I think, a couple of suspects. There's another guy's name. I just can't recall it. And Allen. There was a small packet of paperwork. I think they were stapled together that had a stamp, quote, received by the Manitowoc Public Defender's Office, October 23rd, 25th, close quote. That 3-5 was hard to read. In that collection of documents, was the 1983 report from the beach north of Manitowoc.
And you're unsure as to whether they were stapled together or not?
I think they were because let's put it this way. Whatever I found, I made a copy of it and I put it in our file.
And?
Just to make sure. We're at page 42. Let's pause here. We're at page 42. We're about another 20 pages in. So let's pause here and see if there's any questions, comments, concerns about this little exchange here. I'm sure somebody's got something to say.
So I'm a little bit confused, Jack. Why is he pounding so much on the suspect other than Allen?
Well, he's looking to find out if there's a specific document. I can't tell you exactly why, but the way that he was answering the question he wasn't answering exactly what Glenn wanted or Kelly.
Right.
So
Obviously.
I can't remember exactly why, and I don't remember this other person whoever they're talking about. So, Rhonda?
Yeah, Jack, Hugh was asking, and I think others might have been curious as well, about all of the chaotic, wait, everybody freaking out.
Yeah.
At that point, he'd like to know what that was about.
Well, again, it goes back to the question that we were just talking about, because what Kelly was asking was about a specific one document, only one document, with that specific quoted, Manitowoc received Manitowoc County Police, October 23rd, blah, blah, blah. That's what he wanted an answer to. And Fallon did not answer that. He wasn't answering. He didn't give a specific answer to that question. And that's why that chain reaction started. When he was trying to answer, and Kelly stopped him. No, because that's not what he wanted, and that's where that big exchange came from. So,
Thank you.
yep. What else? Anyone else got questions about that exchange or in Doc?
The only thing, that was a shit show of monumental proportions. That I think I have to go back and restudy it very, very carefully. I think what Kelly was trying to do was to lead to a series of responses from Fallon, and he didn't want to hear or Fallon commit to a specific answer at that time. So I think what he was trying to do was to entrap Fallon about any reports regarding Gregory Allen, right? So what I want to do, and if you notice what Fallon is doing, he's actually minimizing Gregory Allen. His whole aim is to minimize any knowledge, involvement regarding Gregory Allen. Whereas obviously Kelly has got insider information. He's got all the reports, right? So he knows what strategic questions to ask. He knows the answer before he even asks the question, right? So he's trying to get at the basis of when certain individuals knew about Gregory Allen and when.
Yeah.
And Fallon is trying to simply keep at arm's length to anything involving that.
I agree. And Glenn and Kelly's goal is to extract as much as they can find out about what they knew about Gregory Allen.
He's trying to get the state to admit that they had this information, right?
Yep,
because
right.
you want to put it on the record. There's no point in people starting rumors, hearsay, blah, 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 outside of a courtroom, outside of a judge. It carries no weight. What he wants to do, what Kelly's trying to do, is to pin it down so it can be used in a court of law. And Fallon, he's no dummy. He knows what Kelly's trying to do. So he's trying to become like Teflon and simply deflect. He's not going to admit to anything.
Yeah, he's very shrewd and a far better witness than Rohr was. Everything he asked. I'm surprised he could remember his name. I don't recall. It's absolutely ridiculous. On the other spectrum, Go ahead.
I was going to say, Rory knew he was on the spit. He knew he was going to get roasted and toasted. He was almost ready to accept his fate, right? However, Tom Fallon, he knows how to play the game. He's very experienced. He's been around the traps. What he's trying to do, as I've said before, he's actually trying to minimize his involvement. He's trying to give the impression that no one's at fault, because remember, Pegel found that no one was at fault, and he's trying to portray that message that, hey, we didn't know about Gregory Allen. We had, it was just a bad set of circumstances. But Kelly is trying to walk him into a trap. Fallon knows this.
I agree.
This was also about a year and a half after these events occurred. First, Fallon says, "Oh, it's been 2 years." Then he says 3 years. Is what I heard.
Yeah, you're right, because this was May of 2005. So yeah.
Yeah. And they're doing that investigation after Stephen got out, right?
That's correct.
Which was September 11th of
Yep.
2003.
And that's why Kelly kept on talking about exculpatory evidence, right? So he's got a plan. Kelly's got a plan. He's got a really good game plan. He's basically trying to entrap Fallon and the state, of course, to say, well, if you have this exculpatory evidence, don't you think this should have been handed to the defense, right?
Absolutely.
Don't you think you should have found some wrongdoing? Yeah.
But the way Fallon handles it is just simply mind-blowing. And, that's coming up. So, yeah, I'm loving this stuff. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, hopefully I don't. There might be one other exchange of the lawyers in here. I do remember this one and reading through it. And it's like thinking to myself, "Oh my God, guys, come on!" There might be one other exchange and I hope not, but we'll see. Anyway, any other questions? I just kind of like scanned through right quick. I didn't see anything from the chat. Rhonda, did you see anything besides one from you?
No, Hugh just said that he said that helped. Your explanation helped, and he was wondering if there's any attorneys either on the panel or in chat who have experience in a courtroom who have ever seen or heard an exchange like that before.
Well, I mean, we have to keep in mind this was not a courtroom. This is probably in a lawyer's conference room or whatever. It's not a court of law, although it is legal testimony. So, these objections and so forth, they get them on the record. So when it goes, if a case moves forward and the stuff goes to trial, this stuff gets turned over to the judge, and lawyers can say, well, hey, I objected. You can see I'm on the record. I objected. So it does carry legal. Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty common with depositions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Let's march on. We're at, we're 42 pages in. Let's march on a bit further and see where we get. I think we're on line 2.
Okay. And do you believe that when the drafting process took place with respect to exhibit number 7, you made the point that these documents were all stapled together?
I didn't make a comment about they were stapled, but I can show you. I didn't have much to do with this final one, but in terms of, I can tell you where I had something.
I'll get to that. The section on exculpation in the discovery request.
Yeah.
That was the section in which you had a significant hand in drafting?
Well, I don't know about how significant, but there was a comment in here that I made, which I guess was accepted for drafting purposes. If I can find it, let's see. Yeah, I'm looking at document 5038.
Now, what page are you on of the report?
That would be page 12 of the report.
Is there a section number on it?
Yeah, 7. Last paragraph. It appears the DA compiled with these requests. Contained in the defense file is a copy of the Two Rivers police report involving. This report is one of a series of police reports contained in the file. Yeah, a series, right? Okay. The first of these reports involving, another individual, A.P. Sure. It is, okay, so it is with that stack. That one had a stamp on it.
Quote, that one being what? The other suspect's report?
Yeah, this A.P. guy. Right, that's it.
Mr. Cavelli. Excuse me, counsel. Can we just note for the record that the witness was not reading verbatim but was summarizing the report. Mr. Kelly: well, we can just compare what the witness said to what the report says.
Sure.
Mr. Kelly: we've got them both.
Right. So, yeah, there was a series of reports. Allen's was in that series of reports. We had the file stamped copy. That's what I found.
And the file stamp was on a report other than Allen's.
Right. Because AP, yeah, okay. Now that I see that jogs my memory. Yeah. Because that was the one of the top of it was on that stack.
Okay.
Right.
And
okay, so yeah, that makes sense.
You're aware of the controversy in the case concerning whether the Manitowoc City Police Department provided information to the sheriff of Manitowoc County about a whole series of behaviors by Gregory Allen during the summer of 1985 concerning sexual predation, right?
Right. I remember hearing something about that he might have been under surveillance.
Okay.
From time to time, something like that.
Now, let's make an assumption.
Okay.
With me that Bergner goes, Detective Bergner from the City of Manitowoc Police Department.
Okay.
Who later becomes the deputy chief.
Okay.
And he's investigating Allen in the summer of 1985. Goes to see the sheriff and he tells him about the investigation that they're conducting and suggests to the sheriff, we think Allen may be the guy who assailed Penny Bernston.
Okay.
Okay. In your judgment, is that exculpatory evidence? Mr. Cavalli: objection. Form of the question: insufficient hypothetical. Mr. Fallon: I object on form and foundation. By Mr. Kelly: you can answer. Mr. Finkelmeyer: you can answer it.
A damn room full of lawyers. All by itself, standing on its own, no. Is it grounds to look perhaps more? If I get the information, I'd want to sit down with the guy and ask him why you think so.
And in this case, that had it occurred, it was literally a treasure trove, which is in the Department of Justice's files, of information in the files of the City of Manitowoc Police Department about a continuously sexually predatory pattern of behavior by Gregory Allen between January and July of 1985 in Manitowoc. Mr. Cavalli: objection to the form of. By Mr. Kelly: is that correct? Mr. Cavalli: objection to the form of the question.
I'll have to accept your dates. I know there's information in there that Allen had been a suspect in a number of things, unsolved related crimes in Manitowoc. I recall that. So I don't recall the specific dates, nor do I recall the details. But he was someone they were concerned with in Manitowoc.
By Mr. Kelly: including an attempted rape on the 14th of July in which he threatened the life of a young woman with a knife when he was attempting to rape her. Mr. Cavalli: objection to form. Mr. Bascom: objection to form. Mr. Cavalli: of the question. By Mr. Kelly: you can go ahead and answer. Mr. Winkelmeyer: you can answer it.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Sorry, I lost my place.
Line 16.
Yep, and
I think it sounds right. Again, you have to. I haven't looked at that file, but
well, you received those files, didn't you?
I did, but that was,
of course,
years ago.
Just
yeah, I think that sounds right.
Okay, and in addition, you knew that those materials included a surveillance report established by the City of Manitowoc Police Department in July of 1985, leading right up to and including the day on which Penny Bernston was attacked. in which those city detectives were so concerned about the escalating aggression of Allen that they were surveilling him every day. Mr. Bascom. Object to the form by Mr. Kelly. That, too, was in the city files. Mr. Bascom. Same objection.
I can't recall. It might very well. I don't know if you're overstating the case or not. I know he was under surveillance. They were concerned. I mean, obviously, if they had enough evidence, he would have been arrested and taken off the street, which they didn't have. So I know he was under surveillance. I don't know if you're overstating on a daily basis or not, but I do recall he was under surveillance because he was suspected of a number of, as you said, offenses unsolved in the Manitowoc area.
Can we take a little break here, Jack?
Absolutely. Line 23.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll open her up for comments, concerns, questions. Dr. Silkman?
I think what we are actually seeing here is your typical CYA, cover your ass. Now, let's think about this, right? Tom Fallon has experience dealing with sexual predators. He even said so, right? He had expertise in dealing with sexual predator cases. Here was a clear, standout sexual predator operating in Manitowoc and other areas, right? Gregory Allen committed an offense on exactly the same beach prior, exactly the same MO. And this guy is fart-assing around and dancing around the obvious. And the obvious thing is, how come nobody from the MTSO took note about Gregory Allen? And that's what Kelly is getting at. And have a look at how Tom Fallon is bullshitting his way out of it. It's really mind-blowing. Now,
did you notice, Doc, that he first said, I mean, you can continue, but he first said he didn't know anything about a surveillance file, and then this last thing he said he did?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. So what Kelly's trying to say is, hey, you had all this information. How come you never turned it over to the defense? That's exculpatory evidence. Now, a lot of guilters, they make me laugh. They go, well, come on. Would the police really set up Stephen Avery for the murder of Teresa Horbach? Well, guys, have a look at this. This is hitting them right in the face. All the evidence is there about all the wrongdoings by the MTSO, by Kacerik, by Vogel, and Fallon is still in a state of denial. Even with the evidence on the table and all the reports. And that's why I keep on harping back about the exculpatory evidence. What do you think the state is doing to Kathleen Zellner? The same thing.
That's right.
The same thing. And guess who was involved in the bones? Tom Fallon.
Absolutely.
The RAP4, Tom Fallon. It's the same players all the time.
Yep, I agree 100%. It's, I think you said, Tom, you brought up about the bones, and then every time I think about it, the first thought that I have is Williams making that call to Kathleen Zellner. I can't get by that.
Correct. That, look, in all honesty, they were shitting their pants. I'm sorry to be crude, but the reality is very, very simple. Kathleen Zellner is like a bulldog. She's going to get down to the nitty-gritty. Oh, yeah. They knew that. And Fallon was no dummy. He could see what Kelly and Glynn were doing, right? And I'm telling you, desperate men do desperate things. The only way you were going to stop this shit show was to pin a murder on Stephen Avery, and boom, it happened.
That's exactly what they did, and drug poor Brendan right into the middle of it.
Yeah, and guess who was the lead prosecutor for Brendan Dassey?
Tom Fallon.
Tom bloody Fallon.
Yep.
right? Tom Fallon, who's meant to be an expert on child abuse. Well, what the fuck do you think he was doing in court? He's sort of like, I'm an expert on child abuse. Yeah, I did it. I'm an expert on sexual predators, but I closed my eyes.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Look, the next case we do has to involve marshmallows and unicorns. This is bad for my health.
I have to say it, I never expected to, just like so many other people, I never expected it to, to grab my attention to the, not only this case, but the criminal justice system as a whole and the serious issues that go along with it and these various things that have been allowed through the years to be changed to make it so difficult. When a wrong is done, fix it. Just fix it. Make the compensation. And that reminds me, I read a case today, not to get off track here, but I read a case today. I actually saw a little video. This guy, this is happened in Florida, and I can't remember if it's 27 years or 37 years. It's a long time. Regardless, he just got cleared of this case. He's been locked up. The state of Florida refuses to compensate him because he had 3 prior things on his record that are completely unrelated. They were, I don't know if they were felonies or if they were misdemeanors or whatever, but he had 3 prior things on his record. So they will not compensate him for all those years for this wrongful conviction, which completely blew me away. I couldn't believe it. They had another case in Florida, similar situation that they got around it. I don't know, whatever they did, but man, they really need to get that off the books. If it's unrelated to somebody being wrongfully convicted, that's not right. It's not right at all. So this guy's continued to, with his lawyers, they're trying to get that corrected so he can be compensated. I think he could get up to close to $2 million, and he could restart his life, and he's not elderly. I think he's in probably his late 50s, but bad stuff. So, any other questions? Rhonda, have you been looking at the chat? I've been trying to glance at it as we've been talking here, but
no, I haven't seen any questions particularly. Just we've got some comments that make a lot of sense.
yeah, I was kind of hoping that Travis might be around. I know he can't come to all of our podcasts, but he's a good legal source to be able to bounce some of the stuff off of. And I'm sure he's seen antics before in the courtroom that we have no knowledge of. So it'd be interesting to, as somebody said, I don't know if it was, I think I saw some glancing comment there in the chat about having another lawyer comment, but
yeah.
Crockett's got a question, Jack. Who advised Peg L? Was it Tom Fallon?
Who had? Well, no. I mean, he may have had some kind of input, but ultimately, as I remember the case or the depositions and how this went forward, as we've talked about, it was Tom Fallon had input, as did others. The reports came in from Amy Lehman, Deb Strauss. They got forwarded. Deb Strauss forwarded those reports to Jennifer Nashhold. Jennifer Nashhold would compile the reports, and as I understood everything I've read, those got forwarded to Monica Burkhart Brist, which she began, I guess, to formulate this into a memo type document, draft. In other words, they got drafted out, and then she would send it out, to various people for review, and how about this, whatever ideas or thoughts that they may have had that they wanted in or out of the report or this memo that was going to be ultimately going to Peg. And there's another person, and I want to say his name is Mike Bauer, Bauer. I think that's his name. I'm almost positive he did not do a deposition, but he was involved there. in that capacity, but I think he was even higher up than Monica Burkhart Brist. And I think at that level, then it probably went to Peg. So there were several layers between the beginning and then when Peg got it, as I understand it. So.
And Crockett's also asking, was the Assistant Attorney General Tom Fallon? I don't remember that, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he went to work. Well, he went to work for Justice in '93. So I think at that time he became an AAG in '93. I think that's right. So, I mean, certainly not during the the '85 case. He was in Kenosha, as I remember, and then he left there and went into private practice. But nonetheless, I think he said '92 or '93. He went back to. He went to work for Justice, and I think at that point that's when he got into the AG's office and began his career there into various cases. Does that make sense? Read an introduction of Tom as an AAG. Oh yeah, in 2000. Yeah, I mean in 2005 he was an assistant. Absolutely, he'd been an AAG Crockett since '93. So at that time, approximately 12 years had passed. He had been in the Attorney General's office. So he'd been around the block. So, okay. Anything else? Susan said she messaged me, said she'd be back.
I'm back.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry
Good.
about that. My friend was bow hunting and caught the end of his thumb with the string or something and ripped it in two.
Ow.
He's at the hospital, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, stitches?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
He's just waiting for him to numb it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, we stopped on line 23. Are we good to go, Rhonda? Alice? Anybody see anything else they need to add or comment before we go? Okay.
I don't hear anything.
Jack's deposition happened in 2005.
That's correct.
July. Was it June or July?
No, May. It's right there at the top of the
May.
page. May 12th. Mm-hmm. Okay. Take her away. Line 20. Yep, line 23, Susan.
Okay. Yeah. Now assume that the detective from Manitowoc tells that to the Manitowoc County Sheriff.
Okay.
Is that evidence exculpatory evidence? Mr. Fallon, objective form and foundation again.
Again, it may or may not be. It depends. It's obviously there's another possibility out there. But, you have to go back. This is 1985. You're trying to figure out what everything means. And the fact that you have an unsolved offenses in a nearby municipality that may or may not be exculpatory, you need more to go on in terms of that. I mean, if as I recall thinking about the case and trying to figure out what I could or what I would have done, and had I been in those shoes type of thing.
Whose shoes?
Well, anybody's shoes. Although probably I think as a prosecutor, so I think in those shoes. But in terms of, assessing whether or not that could be helpful or exculpatory, the prevailing case at the time on some other dude, some other dude did it theory was a case called State v. Denny. And it talks about you need a motive, you need an opportunity, and you need a direct connection as to whether or not, evidence that somebody else might be involved is clearly admissible now, and that's not the only course determinative of exculpatory evidence. But, your question is, you need a little more, a few more facts, I'd say, before I jump right in there and say exculpatory. Are you asking me if you asked me that, what would I do? I'd say, quote, well, yeah, I'd take a look at that guy, unquote. But, I can't say just on how you frame the question that I'd jump right in and say that it's exculpatory.
God, what bullshit. Talk about talking around.
Yeah, he went all the way around the bend on that one.
Oh, my God. That's ridiculous. Well, add this factor to it.
Okay.
That the detective from the city of Manitowoc comes to the sheriff who is leading the investigation
Okay.
of Stephen Avery. And the detective, when he comes, knows that the sheriff has already made an arrest of Avery.
Okay.
And knows, therefore, that there is a delicacy in this question of whether or not another person may have done it. And says to the sheriff, look, we've been surveilling this guy. His behavior has been escalating. And the one day that we were unable to surveil him is the day that Penny Bjornston was attacked.
Okay.
Quote, I'm concerned enough to be here telling you about that, unquote.
All right.
Is that, Mr. Cavelli? Wait, Mr. Kelly, hold on, Mr. Cavelli. He's not done yet, by Mr. Kelly. Is that exculpatory evidence, Mr. Cavelli? Objection to the, by Mr. Kelly. In your opinion, Mr. Cavelli. Objection to the form of the question. Mr. Fallon, I object to the form. I don't think he said any of those things.
Okay, well, assuming that the discussion occurred, I say it's certainly worth looking at. Whether I'm going to jump in and put the exculpatory evidence label on that, I don't know. Is it evidence which might lead to possible exculpatory evidence? That's a possibility. I mean, if I were, if you were to ask me, I'd probably say, quote, well, okay, what do you got? Why do you think so? Unquote. I might do that.
Okay.
Because I want to make sure that we got the right guy in the first place. But I mean, just to come in on those facts, a lot of it depends on what he's suspected of doing, the nature of those types of offenses, the time, the duration, the relationship to the offense for which I'm the sheriff and I'm investigating. I'm trying to figure out whether they're connected or not. You probably need a little bit more, but I'd be interested, to be honest with you, I'd kind of ask some questions that just to.
Did you, in fact, do that in this case?
Did I?
When you got these materials in the investigation, did you look at the materials from the Manitowoc City Police Department and compare them to the offense of which Stephen Avery was accused to see whether or not those variables that you just talked about, the nature of the offense, the repetition of the offense, the quality of what happened, and so forth, compare them to see whether or not they did meet your concerns? Did you do that?
I can't say that I did except for the extent of this. I looked at that packet of reports that I had in the DA's office and the ones that I found in the public defender's file. And I looked at it and I said, okay, trying to put myself back 20 years in time, which is not an easy thing to do. Say, okay, what do I think? And I kept coming up with, is there a motive for Alan to do this? I kept going back to the law. Is there an opportunity? Well, yeah, opportunity. He was in the area, so opportunity was there. But was there anything about those offenses for which I had the documentation? There was anything was there anything in there that a lawyer could see that might offer a connection to the Penny Bjornston assault, other than the fact that for the obvious one, the 1983 assault, which occurred on the beach 2 miles away 2 years earlier?
How about the July 14th assault?
Well, for whatever reason, that's not sticking in my head right now. And
so you don't know about that?
For whatever reason, it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't resonate. I don't know why that was. Maybe there was something about that assault. I'm not sure what, but for whatever reason, I don't know. It just doesn't stick in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The state public defender, Risa Evans, made a demand in the case for any exculpatory evidence
I think she made 2.
that was in the possession of either the district attorney or the sheriff, right?
Yeah, I think she made an original one, which had a general demand. And then I think there was a subsequent specific demand for other suspects a month later, I think. That's my recollection.
And other than the document that you've described concerning the 1983 Two Rivers incident,
Right.
did you find any other document that was provided to Risa Evans concerning Gregory Allen?
Concerning Gregory Allen, I can't remember other than that series of reports in the file, which again, I don't remember if there were more than one for Allen or not. I just don't remember. So you know, I don't have a clear recollection of that to go further. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to show you together Exhibits 21 and 22. Oops, no, I'm not. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 21.
Okay.
And ask you to take a moment and examine that.
Okay.
Mr. Bascom, what's the number on that?
5102.
Bascom, thank you.
And
where do you want me to... Oh, sorry.
And where do you want me to start on this one?
I'd ask you to just take your time and look through the whole thing because it involves
It's a sequence.
a sequence.
Okay.
And I think it'll come back to you as to what it's about.
Okay. All right. Work in reverse order. Then, okay.
Reporter, should we go off the record briefly?
I just want to go back and I just read the first lead in there. So give me another minute if I could.
A reporter, yeah, let's go off the record briefly. We're back on the record.
Okay, I've completed the review of Exhibit 21, pages 5102 through 5104.
This is an exchange of emails in the course of drafting the report between Jennifer Nashold, yourself, Monica Burkhart-Brist, and Steve Tinker about whether to include a particular paragraph in the report.
Right.
And if you look at Exhibit 7.
7. He indicated, just picked it up over there.
Reporter, oh, sorry. The fact is that it was not included in the report.
Okay, I'll take your word for it because, like I said, I haven't carefully reviewed the final report.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And in the final analysis,
okay,
you made the suggestion or inclination that it be left out.
Right.
And in supporting that, you said, quote, "The shrewd reader will detect that possibility," unquote. And I take it that quote, that possibility, unquote, refers to whether or not the defense attorneys failed to pursue the Gregory Allen information. Is that right? Mr. Cavelli, object.
I think...
Mr. Cavelli, objection to form.
Okay, I think that's what I had in my mind, yeah.
By Mr. Kelly. All right.
Whether we were going to cast blame on the defense.
Okay.
Right.
And then you go on and say, quote, "The practical scholar, of which there are few, may figure out that the evidentiary significance of the information was not readily apparent nor admissible," unquote.
Right.
Okay. Tell me what you mean when you say that the evidentiary significance, quote, "was not readily apparent," unquote.
Well, we're looking at the series of reports, the one in which included Allen in the 1983 assault on the beach. The same beach, although I think it was maybe 2.5 miles away, maybe. And again, I have to go back and look at back to the law at the time, and you look at every lawyer who had their hands on this case, of which there were many. That's why I said the evidentiary significance was not apparent. No one really had, it was nothing to directly connect Allen to the Bernstein assault. I mean, Allen had his own history and he was a pretty bad dude, but there was nothing there to connect that. And although he clearly had an opportunity, was there a motive? Was there anything to just give you a solid inkling other than, he might be it? He's a possibility of all the offenders out there. Well, something that could get you a closer look at. And, I really looked at that long and hard and I didn't see it. And, and what I said, when I said, quote, not readily apparent nor admissible, unquote, you look at all the lawyers who had their hands on this case, of which there were many, and no one came up with anything through all the years. So that's what I meant by that.
So when you're saying...
So I wasn't going to cast aspirations or somebody because I thought the defense did a pretty damn good job here. So...
And when you're saying that you don't think it would be admissible, you're referring to the discretionary ruling by a trial court judge weighing the kinds of variables that you've described to us?
Right. I don't think it would have been admissible. That was my best guess, I'm trying to, I'm trying to think back 20 years ago to existing law in 1985. And because I had argued that what we call Denny motions, that many times done in Kenosha, and, I had that in the back of my head, but.
And would you say that it would be fairly debatable at the time as to whether or not it was admissible?
Fairly debatable? Well.
Do you think reasonable defense lawyers might argue with you about whether or not it was admissible? Mr. Cavelli, objection to the form of the question, vague as to what you're talking about.
Well, you'd have to ask Mr. Glenn as to whether or not prosecutors or defense attorneys think each other are reasonable. I really don't. I think it was pretty clear. I don't think under the law at the time it would have come in unless you had something to connect them. And that's why I was getting at there.
Mr. Finkelmeyer, here we go.
Yeah. Now we're going to have some fun.
By Mr. Kelly. For evidence to be exculpatory at the time, does it have to be admissible?
No.
Okay. And if you were the prosecutor at the time and you had the information that we know about that existed in the Manitowoc Police Department concerning Gregory Allen, would you have been comfortable in not providing that information to the defense? Mr. Cavelli. Objection to the form of the question. Mr. Finkelmeyer. If you understand, go ahead and tell him.
Yeah. No, I would have turned it over. My policy is to turn it over. I'd rather argue about what you think you're going to do with it rather than not what you're going to do with it or not what you're going to get.
Okay.
Whether you're going to get it.
One last question.
Sure.
Does the obligation to turn over evidence of the kind that we've been describing extend to the sheriff? Or, to put it differently, law enforcement can't avoid the impact of the exculpatory evidence by not turning the stuff over to the DA, can they? Mr. Bascom. Object to the form. Mr. Pollen. I join in that. I don't know what we're talking about is sufficiently specific, but go ahead, sir, if you can.
All right. I think I know what you're getting at. So if I can turn it around and answer, let's put it this way. The prosecutor's obligation to provide exculpatory evidence is not excused in this if, for whatever reason, the law enforcement doesn't give it to the prosecution. It's not the prosecutor's fault directly per se, but if the evidence is, in fact, exculpatory, it still undermines the case. And even if the prosecutor didn't have all the information through no fault of his or her own, that would not preclude an appellate court from possibly reversing a conviction if there was evidence out there, because there's, it still undermines the outcome of the case, a reasonable outcome.
And
so you still got to turn it over.
And to your knowledge, there are, in fact, such decisions.
Absolutely.
Where appellate courts have done that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hold on for one moment, if you would, please. Mr. Kelly, that's it.
Let's break right there. This is a good break spot. Yeah, that's a good break spot. So, man, he really went around the bend earlier.
Oh, brother. Jeez.
Here's the thing, and I'll let everybody else talk. I know I've been running my mouth reading his part, but here's the thing. And this is not necessarily talking specifically about Fallon. This is talking about all the other players involved at that time frame. And as Christina has said numerous times, these people knew, at least certain one of them knew that Allen was an operator in that area. Not only in Manitowoc, probably Door County, Calumet. The guy was all over the damn place. There's no doubt about it. They had to have known, and they sat on it. And even rising to the level of District Attorney Vogel, with his own people in his office saying, look, this looks like Allen. What the freak are we doing here?
Well, Vogel had prosecuted him prior, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
I just see all kinds of. To me, this is so clear. It's so black and white. And of course, I get it that Fallon's a state employee. And, he's trying to evade as best he can. There's just absolutely no way around this. No way. Questions, comments, concerns? Alice?
Jesus fucking Christ.
Here we go, as Mr. Finkelmeyer says. Here we go.
Oh my fucking God, I have bought my tongue so fucking long. This guy is a fucking plonker.
He's a fan.
Jesus, man.
Are you saying he's a fanny?
No, he's a big fanny.
Goodness.
Just the way, even when he said about the motive, he never had any motive for the other acts that he done. So why all of a sudden is he going to have a motive to attack Penny Bernstein?
I'm glad you said that, because I think. I think we can all say that Gregory Allen is a psychopath. He's a rapist. He doesn't have to have a motive. He sees a woman, he targets them, or a young girl or whatever. That's his motive. That's all he needs.
Exactly, Jack. And he's known for it. More than what Stephen was ever known for. You know what I mean? But he's sitting there basically trying to say that they didn't think she had a motive for the attack on Penny, which is a load of bollocks. He doesn't have to have a motive.
No, not Allen.
He's a sex crimes investigator.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, he had the other reports too, so he could clearly read Allen's MO, his modus operandi, and what he did and how he approached these various people. He'd take his underwear, or he would steal some piece of clothing, wrap around his face, come in naked. It was all there. So.
Yeah, Christ, he was being watched, for crying out loud.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He was being investigated and he was being watched. And for some odd, weird reason, the cops that were watching him got called away. I'm sorry, if you think that you've got a serial rapist running about your streets committing these horrible offences on women, then you stay with him and you track his movements no matter what. You You don't pull them off to go on another fucking case for them to
Yeah.
be able to go and do what he done to Penny.
It's not entirely clear how tight that surveillance on him was. We're not sure if it was we talked about this recently, I think, if it was more of we'll check on him, 4, 5, 6, 8 times a day, whatever, somebody's in the area, drive by, see where he's at, or if they were actually watching him like a hawk. And that kind of guy, he definitely needed to be watched constantly. No doubt about it.
Yeah, exactly. So why did nobody ask the questions of why these cops took off Gregory Allen when they knew the type of person he was?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's not entirely clear what type of surveillance he was under. So,
And Fallon tries to throw in that, well, you got to have means, motive, and opportunity. Like they answered those questions for Stephen. I mean,
yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Rhonda, I saw you had your mic off a minute ago. Did you have a comment, question?
And I think everyone's kind of already covered it, but that was what was really like getting in my cry. Was just so pissed off when he was talking about well, this about Alan and this about Alan, and gosh, I kept looking at it, and I just couldn't find any reason why it would have been Alan. And I was like, well, what the fuck reasons did you find then that made you think Stephen would have done it? What would have been Stephen's motive? If you can't find a reason why Gregory Allen would have done it, what in the fuck did you use then to believe that it was Stephen Avery? It was pissing me off.
Well, it's a double standard, right?
Well, I was going to say, just Rhonda made a really good point. All those comments would have been reserved for Vogel and Kacerik. It's as simple as that. Because what Kelly and Glynn were doing was they were building up a case, building up a momentum, right? And all of those questions would have landed on the doorstep of Kacerik and Vogel. In other words, the obvious question would have been, okay, you've got Gregory Allen, a known sexual predator who operated in the area. His predation was escalating. He attacked a woman on exactly the same stretch of beach. Now you've got Stephen Avery. Yes, he was involved in running off his cousin on the road. What made Stephen Avery the obvious choice of sexually assaulting Penny Bernstein compared to Gregory Allen?
Exactly.
So just Rhonda laid it out perfectly. And those were the type of questions that were going to go to the feet of Kacerik and Vogel. And they would not be able to answer. And like I said, the internal guy was Tom Bergner. Because Tom Bergner went up to Kacerik and said, excuse me, we have these facts about Gregory Allen. And he told him, and bloody Kacerik denied that meeting ever took place. Then you've got Vogel with a file of Gregory Allen in the Stephen Avery file, and you've got people within his department telling him, I don't think it's Stephen Avery, Gregory Allen fits the bill. So imagine you've got such a clear black and white case of incompetence, negligence, and also targeting of Stephen Avery, yet Tom Fallon sits there with a straight face and tries to admit or tries to sideswipe, no, it's not exculpatory evidence, I need more information. Well, Mr. Fallon, what Glenn should have said to him and Kelly should have said to him, do you want Gregory Allen to take a photograph and come in and admit his crime? Would that have been enough evidence for you?
No doubt.
Right? with Stephen Avery, there was no freaking forensic evidence at all in the 1985 case, right? 16 material witnesses, and according to Vogel and Kacerik, they were all lying.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Lord help anyone if you commit a crime in Manitowoc. You are gone.
Oh, if you're targeted, you're done.
Finished. And to make matters worse, think about who went against Stephen. Kratz, Fallon, and Gunn. Oh my God, they're called the Dream Team. I call it the corruption team. Those three are the most evil men you will ever come across. Chuckin, Vogel, and Kacerik. These were all major players against Stephen Avery and his defense team. These are the same idiots who are now going against Kathleen Zellner. No wonder she's being stonewalled all the time.
No doubt. Well, not to get too far into the political side of it, but there's no doubt there is a heavy political component to these cases. No doubt. Of course, we can't, for us, it's, it's more in the courtroom. And only hoping that, we would have some kind of a political entity, person, whatever, or two or three that would step in and say, look, enough. Something's got to happen here.
Correct.
So
correct. But what's disturbing here is when an attorney with his experience, all jokes aside, when an attorney with his experience, especially working with victims of crime as a result of sexual predators, right? And he's dealt with that. He's also dealt with child abuse, is basically giving Gregory Allen a free pass.
Oh, huge.
Right? And he's trying to put Gregory Allen at arm's length. This is the most disturbing aspect of this whole situation. And now you know that Stephen Avery had no chance in hell of ever being released, or found not guilty for the murder of Teresa Horbach. These guys, look at the bullshit spin they spun with such an obvious perpetrator like Gregory Allen, trying to make the state have no blame, no fault. My God, how can you possibly win against this? This is corruption on a massive, massive scale.
Well, and you notice there, Doc, Kelly's questioning him and talking about this section that he influenced, he wanted left out of that report. That's what this part he was driving at, because it was about Gregory Allen. He wanted that left out, which I think was.
And he even said about the shrewd reader,
yep.
Right? So, it reminds me very much of the Warren report with the Kennedy assassination. That's exactly what they did. They rewrote the report because there was so much damning evidence pointing to other people, right? So they rewrite the report. That's exactly what Fallon was doing. Fallon obviously read the report and said, this doesn't look too good. What are we going to do? Oh, we just remove it.
Yeah, just call it out.
We'll just take it. If in doubt, cut it out.
Yeah, he just said, let's have some surgery here and let me whack this job for you. Exactly. Correct. Right.
And, Gregory Allen must be scratching his head. If he was to read all these reports, he's going, oh, man, these guys are on my side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yep, you betcha.
Okay. Rhonda, did you have something else to add? I saw your light was off there or you were unmuted.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right. Any questions, comments from the chat that we need to address before we move on? There's approximately, I'm going to say 25 pages left in this. I don't really remember the cross here, but any questions we need to get to, comments, concerns?
Well, I did want to, Bethany said, and I don't know if it's rhetorical or not or what, but she says, what did Gregory Allen have going with Fallon that Fallon would hide his crimes? And then she said after that Gregory Allen knows something that Fallon doesn't want out, I'm sure. So
Well,
that's something that I thought about before.
keep in mind how this ties together with what Sunshine Christina found out a few weeks ago. We have to keep this in mind. Remember, Penny Bernstein was attacked by him, sexually assaulted in '85. He just meanders off down the sunset and continues to assault people. 1991, he beats the shit out of this woman. He beats the hell out of her, rapes her in Minnesota in 1991. He walks away from that. His DNA gets flagged in '99. The detective finds out it belongs to Allen. He doesn't do anything with it for whatever reason. We don't know the events surrounding why this detective didn't move forward, because by that time, Allen was locked up in Wisconsin when he did get caught in '95 or '96. So he's locked up. Sometime after that, there was an inquiry. I can't remember who it was that made the inquiry about this woman's case in Minnesota. They found out that, it was Allen. Things get moving. And so in May of 2005, I can't tell you the date, but it was near this time here of when Fallon gave his deposition. A judge signs a warrant for his arrest. Now, it takes time to go through the process because it's another state. The actual warrant was written in September of 2005 and prepared, the legal document, that is. So keep in mind all of that surrounding Gregory Allen. This guy is just, oh my God. And, I don't know, surely by that time, I'm certain that, the powers that be, I'm sure the governor and, probably several of those in that office and probably Peg for sure knew about this warrant that was impending on Allen for this other rape in Minnesota. But there's nothing in the media. It's all kept quiet, hush, hush, not talked about. Can you imagine, Doc, everybody out there listening, if this news would have hit in the midst of these depositions?
It was all. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's all about timing, right? And what you do is you suppress what harms, right? And I'm telling you right now, the reporters would have been right on it. And, this whole thing would have blown up in their face because, there you go. These are the direct consequences of the actions of Kacerik and Vogel and others, that this man, Gregory Allen, was on the streets for an additional 10 years doing all sorts of horrible, vile crimes. Now, think about it. Imagine pointing a finger at a sheriff and a DA that you blindly arrested Stephen Avery and you knowingly knew about Gregory Allen and you let him off the hook and on the street for 10 years. I'm telling you, it would have blown up the MTSO. It would have been game over.
Not only did he do these other assaults that weren't as bad, but he did the one that we know of for sure in Minnesota, and then he did the other one in Wisconsin. We don't know about any others that he was never connected with, but that would have landed straight. This other one would landed straight in her lap, no doubt about it. The media would have exploded.
Correct. And it's remarkable. I'll never forget it. The look on Kacerik's face. Remember when the report came out and he had a big smile on his face before the cameras turned on him, and then he turned all serious and he said, "Well, we didn't mean any harm by this, and we're glad it's all over." Of course, he's fucking glad it's all over. Oh my God.
Yep. But if that had that other case from Minnesota, oh my God! Jeez. Anyway,
correct,
all right,
correct.
Let's move forward and get a little bit more of this done. Oh, I got the wrong thing there. Susan, are you still with us?
I'm here, Jack.
Alrighty. That turned back on.
Looks like Mr. Cavelli is going to.
Yeah, he's going to be doing the questioning. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. By Mr. Cavelli. My name is Claude Cavelli.
Sure.
I just have a couple questions. Exhibit 7, the report.
Right.
That is the report of the Wisconsin Department of Justice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It's not your individual report.
No.
It's not the individual report of Ms. Nasholt, correct?
No.
That report was prepared by the agency for which you work, under authority by law for that agency to investigate factual matters. True?
Yes.
And as pursuant to that authorization, this report was made and made certain factual findings. Is that correct?
Right.
I'd like to refer you to Section 7. I think you had referred to that earlier.
Okay.
Do you have that there?
Yep.
And in that section, was a finding of fact made as to whether or not the report with respect to the 1983 Gregory Allen lewd and lascivious charge was a part of the Office of the Public Defender in Manitowoc received on or about October 23rd, 1985? Mr. Kelly, could I have the question read back, please? Mr. Cavelli. All right. I think we'll need to play it back. Reporter. Sure. Mr. Kelly. I'm sorry. Reporter. Stand by. Reporter. Stand by. Okay. Please proceed.
I believe it was. I believe it was a reasoned conclusion that there was a copy of that report in their file.
By Mr. Cavelli. And the 1983 police report does not refer to sexual assault, does it? As found in that paragraph, it says, well, let's read it. Quote, notations on the same, unquote. Mr. Kelly, where are we, counsel? By Mr. Cavelli. Okay, we're at Section 7.
Right.
The paragraph that starts, quote, it appears, unquote. Mr. Kelly. All right.
Okay.
By Cavelli. Do you find that?
Yep.
In the middle, right after the quotation mark around October 23, 1985.
Right.
I want to read the next sentence. And does it say, quote, notations on that same page cross-reference this police report to the 1983 Gregory Allen lewd and lascivious charge, unquote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. As you sit here today, do you know if there was any sexual assault indicated in that 1983 incident?
You mean like a hands-on offense as opposed to?
Touched her.
Yeah.
In any form or fashion?
No, all I recall is what's referenced here.
Okay. Now, do I understand that a request had been made for the Innocence Project to forward their file material to the Wisconsin Department of Justice for review?
I think we did request the file.
Did they ever turn that file over?
Well, as reflected in the emails, I don't remember what was going on or what some of the holdup was, but it just seemed, I don't know, we settled on the pact of me just going to visit. So I went and I visited rather than, we didn't want to wait for however long it took them to do whatever they were doing with the file. We wanted to get going on that. So that's why I went over there and did the page by page review.
Were you ever provided a satisfactory explanation as to why they would not provide you the file?
You know.
And by you, I should strike that. Why they would not provide the file to your agent, Mr. Kelly. Well, I'm going to object. There's no showing they didn't provide the file. They, in fact, allowed him to examine the file. They just didn't make a copy and deliver it to him. By Mr. Cavelli. Strike that. Let me rephrase the question. Did they ever satisfactorily explain to the Wisconsin Department of Justice why they did not physically turn over a copy of the file as requested?
I don't have any recollection of any of how it ended up the way it is. And Mr. Finley didn't further elaborate to me. So, it's an interesting question. So, it's an interesting question. I don't remember. I really don't have a real clear recollection of what the concern was. But no explanation was ever provided to me. So that's why I said, well, I can just go look at it. And they were happy with that. So that's what I did.
Is Exhibit 7 the one and only report that's been published by the Wisconsin Department of Justice on the subject matter of the prosecution and investigation regarding Stephen Avery that occurred in 1985?
As far as I know, it was. In terms of this official document in this format, I don't know who it was given to other than Mr. Rohr. I have no idea if it was given to any media. That I have no idea. You'd have to ask the front office. I know it was pretty sure it was posted on our website, the DOJ website, so there was a public access that way. Exhibit, being shown Exhibit 6, yeah, that looks like probably what would have been downloaded from the website. Yeah. So in terms of quote published unquote, these are the only two forms that I'm aware of, which is Exhibit 6 and 7.
To your knowledge, are the words in those two formats any different? Or, are they basic? Mr. Kelly, I'll stipulate that they are the same. By Mr. Cavelli. They are the same. All right.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. I didn't read them in great detail, so I just noticed. I knew it was on there, but...
The conclusion. If you look at Exhibit 7, section number 8.
Okay, yeah.
And let me ask if I read this correctly.
Which paragraph?
Mr. Kelly, where are we, counsel? By Cavelli. Section 8, conclusions, first paragraph.
Okay.
Quote, there is no basis to bring criminal charges or assert ethical violations against anyone involved in the investigation and prosecution of this case, unquote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And does that refer to the prosecution of Mr. Avery that we've been alluding to here today?
Yes.
And was the conclusion of the Wisconsin Department of Justice as set forth in this report?
Yes.
Mr. Cavelli, that's all I have. Examination by Mr. Bascom. I just have a couple of follow-ups on, I'll move down. A couple of follow-ups on your review of the Project Innocence file.
Okay.
Did you review the entire file or just the defense file that was contained in the Innocence Project file?
Well, I believe they brought me I was informed that they brought me everything they had. A lot of it were, transcripts from the post-conviction hearing and the appellate record from the one or two appeals, or three appeals in the case. So there was a lot of stuff which I didn't have to look at because we had our own transcripts. So I was able to quickly zip through a lot of the stuff that I knew we already had. It was a sizable file, so it took me a couple of hours to go through it.
Excuse me. Now, with regard to the public defender's files or the defense file that you reviewed as part of the Project Innocence file, were the file materials that were provided, the defense file materials, were those original documents or were those photocopies of original documents?
I guess that depends on what you mean by, quote, original, unquote. The original documents, for instance, the original police reports, I would imagine were still at the sheriff's office. The DA had copies. The DA makes copies and provides copies of the copies to the defense. So,
was there any correspondence that you reviewed as?
I remember looking at correspondence dealing with whether or not the trial lawyers at the time thought that the discovery had been complied with.
Do you remember seeing any original documents
Originals?
contained in the? I mean, I'm assuming that at some point in time, someone will have written a letter to one of the public defenders on this file, either from transmitting, for example, a copy of an appellate brief or sending some other notice out.
I think there was.
And that would contain an original correspondence. And what we're trying to find out is whether or not we have a complete file. So if there were original documents in the Innocence Project file, we might be able to run to the conclusion that that's where the original file ended up. If they were all photocopies and there were absolutely no original document, then maybe there's an original file somewhere we can find.
Okay. Well, I can't say it's ironclad, but I do have a recollection of some original documents to the extent, in other words, stuff that prosecutors ordinarily wouldn't have. For instance, I think there was a copy of a letter from Jim Bogart to maybe Jack Shayer.
That was a photocopy. That was not an original. That was something Bogart sent, and he would make a photocopy of that and put it in his file. What I mean...
No, I meant a letter from Bogart to Shayer saying, I think I did get all the discovery or something like that, and in which case Bogart would have had a copy in his file, and then there would also be an original of that sent to the public defender. It just struck me that there was some, letters and correspondence in there that would, for stuff that I wouldn't, if I was a prosecutor, I wouldn't get a copy of it. It'd just be between various defense folks. In fact, I think there was some letters from Mr. Glenn. So there's stuff like floating around that ordinarily we on the other side of the table wouldn't see.
Sure, but my question is whether those are documents that would normally flow to the prosecution versus being circulated amongst defense lawyers. Do you have a recollection, one way or the other, of whether or not you saw a photocopy of a letter as opposed to a letter on bond with a signature on it? That's an original signature. That's not a photocopy. And if you don't remember, you don't remember.
Like I said, I don't have an ironclad memory, but I have a fair recollection that there was some original letters, correspondence amongst the defense attorneys involved in the different points in time.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel comfortable. I think there was.
Mr. Bascom. Okay, thanks. That's all I have. By Mr. Kelly. I have some follow-up.
Sure.
To Mr. Cavelli's question. Do you have Exhibit 7 in front of you?
Yep.
Mr. Cavelli read you the first sentence of paragraph 8.
Yes.
Simply in the interest of completeness, would you read the entirety of the paragraph, please?
Sure. Second sentence begins, quote, "At worst, the Sheriff's Department failed to investigate a viable suspect, Gregory Allen, in its quest to capture PB's assailant quickly. Had the Sheriff's Department taken more time in exploring potential suspects prior to the one photo array and live lineup, it is possible that Allen's photograph might have been included in the photo array or that Allen himself might have been in the live lineup. While it is impossible to know whether PB would have chosen Allen as her assailant, including Allen obviously would have increased the chances that PB would have chosen the right person, especially considering that Allen and Avery had a similar appearance." Unquote.
Okay. In your first few questions and answers, Mr. Cavelli, he asked you whether this report, which is actually entitled, quote, correspondence/memorandum, unquote, right?
Right.
Exhibit 7, if you turn to the first page.
Sure.
That's what its title is, right?
Yes.
He asked you if this report was an investigatory report in which, pursuant to lawful authorization, factual findings were made. Do you recall that?
Yeah, he did. Right. Okay.
Okay, and you said yes,
Right.
right?
I think, yeah, I did say some findings. Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's clear that we made some findings or some assumptions here. Yeah.
Okay, I want to show you exhibit number 2.
Okay.
Ask you to take a moment and examine that.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Sure.
The lawful authority that you're speaking of is the statute that's cited by Mr. Tinker, 978, parent, right?
Yeah, that would be the first thing that comes to mind at the moment.
Okay, and would you just read that citation into the record for?
Paragraph 1.
No, just the statutory cite.
Oh,
I don't have it in front of me. That's why.
sure. Wisconsin Statute Section 978.058B, which deals with the appointment of a prosecutor.
Actually, that B deals with the authority to review certain things when a special prosecutor is requested. Is that right?
I believe it. I haven't looked at the statute in a while as to whether the sequence is, but that sounds about right.
And between September 11th, in 2003, when Stephen Avery was released, and September 19th, 2003, when the district attorney for Manitowoc came down to the Justice Department and brought the box with him,
Okay.
there was, in fact, quite a discussion in the Justice Department about whether or not the Justice Department had authority to conduct the kind of review that it did in this case. Do you recall that?
That might have been what happened. I don't remember being a big party to that discussion, but it might have.
And the persons who were in fact involved in that discussion were Attorney General Peg Lautenschlager, Deputy Attorney General Dan Buck, Mr. Stephen Tinker, and Attorney Michael Bauer. Mr. Cabelli. Objection. Kelly, is that correct? Mr. Cabelli. Objection. Form of the question. No foundation.
Let's put it this way: if the discussion took place, I would imagine it would have been the people involved, because it certainly wouldn't have been my call as one of the minions to decide what we could or shouldn't do for public consumption. So I don't recall being part of that discussion. It wouldn't surprise me if such a discussion occurred.
By Mr. Kelly. On the day that Stephen Avery was released, Keith Findley, on behalf of the Avery family and the Innocence Project, made a public request that the Attorney General conduct an investigation of what had happened in the Stephen Avery prosecution. And by Sunday, the 14th of September, the Attorney General announced that there was no authority to conduct such an investigation. Is that correct? Mr. Cabelli, object to the form of the question.
I'll take your word for that. I don't have a clear recollection of that. I suppose that's probably why we looked at it from a criminal misconduct charges or ethics violations associated with that. I don't have a real clear recollection, but that's possible.
Are you aware of any statutory?
Because that would have been before I got asked to participate.
Let me ask you with reference to your general knowledge.
Okay.
Of exhibit number 7.
Yep.
Whether or not you are aware that, as to certain facts that are stated in that report, there were, in fact, differing investigatory reports where, for example, one witness would say, quote, "These people were in the room," unquote.
Oh.
Or, quote, "This person made the statement," unquote. And other witnesses would say to the contrary. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I think there was. I think there might have been an example as to whether or not he was pouring concrete on the day of the offense or something. I think there was some discrepant reports all over the boards on that issue. So I think there was. Yeah, any investigation would have that almost. I would think.
Okay, and for example, There were debates and discussions about the sequence of events in the hospital room involving the photo array and the statements that were made that that's Stephen Avery, and so forth. Differing witnesses gave different accounts of that sequence. Mr. Cavelli. Objection by Mr. Kelly. Is that correct? Mr. Cavelli. Objection. Form of the question.
I don't have a clear recollection of that, but there's, it's pretty rare if witnesses all agree on a sequence of events that they all remember the same thing. That makes me nervous. But yeah, I would say there was some.
So?
There's always inconsistencies.
So what in the world is the authority of the Attorney General or the Department of Justice or any 3 lawyers in the Public Integrity Unit or anybody else to make findings of fact in some correspondence and memorandum about what they believe actually happened in the face of conflicting evidence? Mr. Cavelli. Object by Mr. Kelly. Where does that authority come from? Cavelli. Object. Bascom. Object to form. Cavelli. To the form of the question.
Well, to me, I'd go back to what I was asked to do, and that was it. There was any evidence of any criminal misconduct here? Is there any evidence that there was, misconduct in public office, which would still be actionable, notwithstanding the statute of limitations? And number 2, was there anything, that arguably, and related to that, was there an ethical violation insofar as did all of the evidence get disclosed that should have been disclosed? So when I look at it as a special prosecutor, I didn't give too much thought to the political stuff behind this because I don't really care about the politics behind it. I look at my role at evaluating the case, look at the facts, and trying to assist the other 2 attorneys, that is, and decide, well, is there any criminal misconduct here? Did the discovery obligations, were they met here? I mean, look at it from that perspective, and that may be, too narrow. But from that perspective, that's my job as a prosecutor, to look at the stuff and make the call. So that I think I have authority to do. If somebody is appointed special prosecutor to look at a case to make a decision, I think we have authority to do that.
By Kelly. Yeah, but the decision you're making that is whether or not you have enough evidence to proceed to prosecute, right?
Right. And I think that's what we kind of concluded at the end. I think we just say that there's no basis for criminal charges or ethics violations. And I think that's a narrow conclusion, but I think that was, maybe that's, again, I'm speculating on what the management had in mind, but I just look at what my job was. And so, we made reasoned conclusions, or in this case, Jennifer and Monica and myself made the reasoned conclusion that's reflected there.
Actually, in paragraph 7.
Yep.
On compliance with discovery requests.
Number 7. Yep. Okay.
You made those findings. You personally made those findings. That's you analyzing what you think happened. Mr. Cavelli. I'm going to object to the form of the question. Mr. Finkelmeyer. I don't think there is a question there. By Mr. Kelly. That's what I'm asking him. Is it him? He made those findings. Not Monica, not Jennifer, not the Attorney General.
Well, they relied on my finding copies of the reports. And of course, I had to back it up. They weren't going to take my word for it. But in terms of my involvement, I probably had as much involvement in this section as any other section, just because I'm the one that reviewed the defense file and looked at the correspondence and talked to Mr. Bogart. And
you are the guy who made the decision not to dump out on the criminal defense lawyers, aren't you?
I didn't make that decision at all. I just made the suggestion.
which was accepted.
Well, apparently so.
Do you have any recollection about whether or not the Attorney General was upset about that particular conclusion?
No. As a matter of fact, I never heard back from anybody after my initial set of comments. I never heard a word from anybody.
Do you know whether or not after the report was presented and witnesses appeared before the Avery Task Force, that Attorney General pleaded with members of her staff to get out to the press the fact that the defense lawyers had failed to follow up on the Gregory Allen matter?
I'm aware of no such effort on that behalf.
Mr. Kelly, okay. Reporter, okay. There being no further questions, this deposition. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Pollen, one other thing. There were 22 exhibits marked to reference today. I understand that 10, 11, 12, and 13 are of the boxes and files of the Department of Justice. Those original documents are going back to the Department of Justice, but Attorney Finkelmeyer has indicated to us that the materials may be available to any of us for review, and in fact, the department is going to bait stamp that which has not been stamped and make that available for copying for us. With regard to the other exhibits, I would renew a request that the original of them go with the court reporter and that copies be made available so that the original exhibits can be made part of the original record in the case. Mr. Kelly, you've indicated they're going to go back with you, and I guess that is what it is. Mr. Kelly. Well, Mr. Pollen, I don't know that we need to do all of this on the record, but the statement about that was just that we have one locale, all of the original. Do we need to read this, Jack?
I don't think so.
I don't either.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Because they go on, and that's basically the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Outstanding.
I agree.
Okay. Wow. What a read.
Wow. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, number one, I'd like to thank everybody for hanging in there. It was a little rough there with the back and forth with the lawyers and all their bullshit, which, I guess that's with any profession, but some of it just seems a little petty and it just, I don't know, just ridiculous to me. But anyway, I think that, this is a little bit confusing. I've read through a lot of the depositions, so it's less confusing for me. And I know others have as well, and they understand a little bit better. But, part of this, what he's driving at, Kelly was with Fallon, was that he had influence over, especially a certain section that got culled out. And that was the fact of, not including stuff on Allen. And I'm sure other areas as well. And that if you read the Jennifer Nashhold and Monica Burkhart-Brist depositions, you get a far better sense of that. And at some point, someday we will. These depositions are great. I'm glad that we're doing them finally. I don't intend to make them one per week. That's not it at all. But as time goes, they're going to be included as part of the open mic process. So the information's out there and it builds a better story. What I'd like to do moving forward, and then I'll shut up, is put these in dated order so there's more continuity, if that makes sense. So anyway, questions, comments, Doc?
Yeah. Well, I have to admit all jokes aside, that's probably one of the most disgusting depositions I've ever heard. And it really is concerning. A person of his stature and expertise was basically standing up for a known sexual predator. And to prove my point, am I just allowed to read a small little passage?
Please.
Because this little passage absolutely summed it up, right? And this is Mr. Cavelli, right? So the question that Mr. Cavelli asked Fallon was, I want to read the next sentence. And does it say, quote, notations on that same page cross-reference this police report to the 1983 Gregory Allen lewd and lascivious charge? Did I read that correctly? Yes, you did. Question. Okay, as you sit here today, do you know if there was any sexual assault indicated in that 1983 incident? Answer. You mean like a hands-on offense as opposed to question, touch her? Yeah. Question, in any form or fashion? Answer. No, all I recall is what's reflected here. Now, look at this. Have a look at this. So, running after a woman, lunging at her, pulling down your pants and masturbating is not a sexual offense.
Nope. Apparently not there in that part of the world, Doc.
Right. So all the sexual perverts are going to migrate to Manitowoc, correct?
Yep.
And let me guess. Who changed the charge to lewd and lascivious? Who charged him with a lewd and lascivious act?
You talking about Al?
Who was the prosecutor?
Oh, it had to be Vogel.
Vogel.
Yeah.
Vogel. So this is buddies protecting buddies. So
Of course.
have a look at this. Have a look at what these motherfuckers have done. They're now giving a free pass to the MTSO because what Gregory Allen didn't constitute sexual assault.
Yeah, I mean that was
For fuck's sake.
So
that was
everyone was clean. Everyone was clean. There was nothing to worry about. So in other words, guys, there was nothing to see here. And to me, honestly, I am completely shocked. Fallon has made Brad look like a school kid.
Yeah, I mean, for Allen, and we talked about it before, this guy was always able to somehow get his charges knocked down to jaywalking or whatever, It's ridiculous.
That's correct. Unbelievable. And like he was caught staring into the bathroom of a young girl, right? And the charge was, he's only a peeping Tom. He's only a peeping Tom.
Yeah, unreal.
I'm telling you guys, Stephen had no chance.
No.
No chance in 2005. He was gone.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I think this, his testimony in this deposition, it really is. It's really interesting. I won't say it's the most interesting, but it's certainly probably in the top 5 or 8 of all of them, all the depositions. Of course, it leads to this bigger story, which you've alluded to there, and then there are other aspects of it as well. So
the most interesting never happened.
Yeah. So anyway, any other comments? We've been here for pushing 3 hours, I think. Let me see here. Yeah, we're at 2:48. So any other comments?
My final comment was, I have to blame BB for my cussing because really I'm a good that.
She's not here to defend herself, Doc. That's not fair.
Oh, she'll admit it. Yeah. It's all her fault.
I mean, I think I even outdid Alice, and that's saying something.
It is.
Yes, it is.
What the hell's wrong? Alice has kind of been under the weather lately. She did kind of claw her way back up a little bit today, but you're going to take your top post back there soon, Alice.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take my trophy back after that, Doc. That been right.
Looks like
I apologize to all those who have been offended.
Looks like
everybody's thought it's been hilarious, Doc. You're dropping the F-bomb and that.
Yeah, I think everybody gets a kick out of it when you drop the F-bomb.
Well, one can't help themselves because, like I said, when you see this crap, this absolutely vile crap, and they're trying to justify their reasonings, and rubber stamp the report that Pegel eventually wrote. There's no justice. There simply is no justice, guys. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
You
And
made a
Alan
comment.
never did. Alan never did get prosecuted for Penny.
No,
That's so
no,
sad.
it is. It really is no justice at all for that crime. You made a comment. When did this transcript first start to get appreciated for its insights? R.E. Fallon's character. I wonder. I don't recall mention of it in Farrak's book, and I'm thinking maybe he was unaware of it. I don't. I mean, the transcripts and so forth. I don't know how much he got access to. Hugh. There were rumblings and talking about it, way back years ago. However, having access to all of it, I say that the real appreciation for me personally came when we got the documents, which was last year after the crowdsourced event. I really appreciated, and I mean, I always knew that I don't like how Fallon approaches the law. I do appreciate his intelligence of it, though, and you have to appreciate it because this guy's smart. Doc will agree with me, even though I know he doesn't like the guy. The guy is very intelligent about the law, and he used it to great effect. So, yeah, I have a huge appreciation of it.
I just wanted to address a comment that Doc made in the chat. He says, "Don't worry, everyone. I'm going to church and going to repent for my sins." Well, that's a whole nother week away. So, would you like me to write them down for you?
Don't worry. I've got my local priest's phone number on speed dial.
Are they? I was just going to say, Doc, are they open here in the next couple of days or something? We can get you in.
Yeah, correct. I think I need to go to Mr. Kratz's. Where did he go to dry out? I think I need to go there.
All right, gals. If there's nothing else, is there any other comments? I don't want to cut anyone off. We've been here this long.
Jack, I don't. Just kind of off topic. TTM Fangirl asked way back in the beginning, and if you want to address this another time, we can. I think she'll understand. Otherwise, she's wondering if anybody is able to comment or give an opinion on the convicting trailer that came out over the weekend or last week.
Well, I mean, we can address it now. I mean, it is what it is, and from what I understood, Sean Reck was going to be doing was to tell a more complete story than what was, he felt that was shown in Making a Murderer. There's, I guess you could say, what do you say a more complete story? If we're writing a book, I guess you want a more complete story. Or we talk about a more complete story about the Halbach investigation. It just all depends on how you look at it. But back to the trailer. I thought it was, it's interesting. I caught a couple of little clips there that certainly caught my eye. That's all I got to say about that for now. Doc, anybody else?
Yeah, I feel the same. It was definitely interesting, but I don't have much of an opinion.
You talking about the deposition?
No.
The trailer for convicting.
Am I permitted to swear again?
Go ahead. You're in this far. In for a penny.
Yeah.
In for.
Yeah. I want to reserve my comments until I see a little bit more.
Okay. Fair enough. Susan, did you have a comment? Alice? There you go. Alice, what do you got?
Yeah, it doesn't look good to me. Just with the people that I've seen in the beginning. I'm so hoping that it is going to be like Sean said that it's going to be, and it's not just going to be everybody else like Kratz and even Stephen's family bad mouthing them and everything like that, because then that's no fair sided to me, you know what I mean? So I'm a bit dubious about it, to be honest.
Looks like a Gilter piece to me.
Yeah, Susan. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just the few characters that we seen in that trailer. They could have had some of the truthers in that trailer. I didn't see very many, so I'm very dubious about it.
Yeah,
I'll just say this: I don't believe they're going to be unbiased in
No.
release.
well,
No.
no, I think there's going to be bias.
That came from.
Mhm.
You know, it's Avery and Greaseback's book is where the production sort of has come from, so that should say it all, in my opinion.
Say that again, Alice.
Somebody had posted the production, was it Avery Wave, had posted the notice, and it had the production and everything like that of the convicting trailer, and it looks like it's Kratz's book and Greaseback's book that they've went to for part of the production.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That was Brenda that edited those books.
Yeah, I think that's what that
She's
was.
part of convicting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, TTM fangirl, who Brenda is? She was asking who Brenda is. So yeah, she's part of their
What's
part
her
of their
last name?
production team. Brenda, crap, I can't remember. Schuler, Seller,
Maybe Schuler. Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
right.
To me, highly representative of an anti-making a murderer sentiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I just these arguments that we've had over the years with guilters or people on the other side that believe in guilt, however, verdict defenders, however you want to say it, is that making a murderer left out this, did that, edited. But the truth is, this has happened throughout the entire thing, and long before the filmmakers got involved making a murderer gals, there was editing going on right in two police departments that we talk about all the time. No doubt.
Correct. That's correct.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I think that covers everything I've been seeing in the chat.
one final thing, thought about the convicting trailer, knowing that Rookie has that interview with Mr. Kratz, and how bad he looked, and he's jumping up and down. Basically, he went sideways. Are you smoking crack? What do you think a coroner does? All they do is kick a body. What?
Yeah. That was that interview with Ryan Foley is just epic.
That's another one.
Well, that one with Ryan. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about with AC. Yeah.
Yeah, with Ricky. Yeah.
With the Ryan Foley interview is just so epic, but it's so hard for me to listen to it. I get so anxious. Really hard.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully we've covered about as much of that as we can. So if there's anything else, we're good to go.
I think we're good to go.
All right. I'd like to appreciate all the troopers that have hung around. I'd really like to thank Susan for helping me read through that. She did a fantastic job, as always. I'm sure there will be. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be lining back up for more of this kind of torture. I do want to say that I think Zoe finished day 9 of the Brendan trial finally, and that's going to be, I think, released tomorrow. I can't tell you what time yet. So that's going to be done. And then we're going to be scheduling to get the post-conviction, 2010 post-conviction hearings, get those recorded and get those posted at some point soon. So thanks to everybody in chat. If everyone liked what we've done, let us know. There's going to be more depositions at some point. I hope everyone has kind of enjoyed this and got something out of it, more knowledge than what you walked in with. But give us a like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and we'll catch you next time. This has been a Foul Play production.